Abington Planning Board. I hereby call our July 18th, 2022 meeting to order. Welcome back, everybody. We do have a quorum. I know that at least one person is going to be here a little bit late, but I think we can go ahead and get started. As far as our agenda this evening, we have a handful of administrative items that we'll punch through first. Then we'll save the meeting minutes review for the end of the meeting, just so that we don't take any time ahead of the hearings for that. We'll go ahead and go to the South Street continued hearing. We have a amended definitive subdivision for Box Mill that is technically continued, although we haven't started it. And then we have a new public hearing for 8492 West Main Street. So at this point, we're going to move to the first administrative item. And actually the first two items, I am going to recuse myself as a resident of Chamberlain Street. So I'm going to hand it over to Mary Lester Marlowe, who's going to lead this discussion. So excuse me while I
Thanks, Gary.
step away.
Okay, so the first item is Chamberlain Whalen Traffic Fund discussion and vote. And this is not specifically with the DPW, but it's funds that we were transferring to the DPW for traffic calming measures. This is something that had been set aside from the funds from the developer to be used for traffic calming. And as you may recall, we voted maybe a month ago or so to send those funds to the DPW and for the DPW as the experts in traffic calming measures to decide what to do with those funds. They said that they need more specific direction. So we simply need to give them more specific direction. And I don't want to reopen this whole discussion about what it should be and all that, but I do want to give you each the opportunity. It's not going to be a public hearing, but because we already have heard from the public on this matter. But if each of you members of the board would like to comment, and you do not need to comment if you are fine with, going forward to the vote, but I'll give you the chance to comment. Thanks. Rob, we're just tackling the very first item on the list, and that is the Chamberlain Whalen traffic calming funds that the DPW is looking for more specific direction about. Okay? Okay, so Dave, do you want to start?
The way I recollected it was we designated an area for the traffic calming that we suggested.
Yes.
To the DPW. I remember that it was a good place because it was near, it's kind of a straighter area, I believe, and safer for, and possibly close to the center trail. So I'm all for that.
Okay.
I follow with what Dave was suggesting. If I recall, there was a discussion between speed bumps versus speed mound, and I think that's one thing I was much more in favor of, just because the fact people driving in the neighborhood with tractor trailers can make a lot of noise and stuff like that. Another option was having a stop sign somewhere in between. What people blowing a stop sign and every now and then. So I still am more in favor of the speed mounds, similar to what we see in the entrance to the Hopkins Hill and elementary school.
Okay, thank you.
I think those both sound good, those suggestions, so I'll follow with Dave and Rod's suggestion.
Okay, and I know you weren't involved in the first discussion, so. Jane?
Okay, so I think we could throw back a few ideas to the DPW director and have him feel that out. I would be in favor of a table to slow down the traffic in front of the Center Trail exit, as long as the residents in that area are aware that landscaping trailers particularly are going to make a lot of racket when they go over them. But if they're in favor of that, hey, I think it would be a good idea. The other thing that I would like the DPW director to look at is maybe either fog lines to keep people in the center, in their correct lane, or that may not be practical, the road is so narrow, but a center line to help people stay on the correct side of the road. Because what that enables most drivers, not all drivers, but to stay on the correct side of the road so that they inevitably are forced intellectually or psychologically or something to slow down and stay in their correct lane. Because most drivers do want to, be careful, but those physical reminders could be helpful. And it would be interesting to see what the superintendent would say about that, or the director, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna just clarify a little bit. They said, they came back to us, or came back to John, and said that we need to decide.
Oh.
So we did essentially try to get them to, make a decision based on a few recommendations from us, and they said, no, just tell us what to do, and that's what we'll use the funds for. So.
Through you, if I now have
Yes, you may.
another follow-up. What is the amount of money that was given to this project, and would any of these fall within that limitation?
So, I don't recall the exact number of dollars, but.
It was
to-
10,000.
10,000, okay. So, and we have gotten indication that, speed tables can be more expensive. And I'm not sure about the lines, but depending on the length of the road. I mean, painting is, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it'd be that expensive, but I don't know. But I have also been given the indication that we can put the funds toward even a speed table if it's not covered fully by the funds that we provide, that the DPW could find the remainder in their funds, so in their budget.
And has there been any outreach, I'm sorry,
Oh, go ahead, Jane. You did.
has there been any outreach to the immediate neighbors in that vicinity?
There was a public hearing, actually, there were two, I think, public hearings, where we discussed it at length with neighbors. And although, I mean, basically every single, and feel free to correct me if you recall it differently, but every single potential use of the funds was liked by some people and not liked by other people. And, as is the nature of everything, right? But a speed table at the center trail did seem to be the most overall consensus of the board as well as the public. Not everybody loves it. Again, they talked about the landscaping trucks and other trucks and things like that. However, and other people commented that that's not as bad with speed tables as it is with speed bumps. Speed bumps, it's particularly bad. So, but the noise can occur with speed tables as well. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to add on. So I just wanted to call out that I remembered a few more things I just wanted to pass along. So we didn't make any suggestions for the Whalen Road side. It was only
Correct.
the Chamberlain side. To your point, there was a lot of discussion, but speed table was the most common one. I think we threw out, stop signs. Some people wanted stop signs. We threw out the electronic boards, where it gives your speed. Threw out speed bumps, obviously, instead of speed tables, but, just to agree with you.
Yep.
And since DPW is willing to offset some of the cost, I would actually 100% support Jane's idea of asking for both the speed table and lines. Because psychologically, I don't have
It
any
does
evidence
help.
one way. I cannot say, I'm not a psychologist, but I think that's just a simple little thing that may go much further than a table will. And since it is just paint.
Just a follow-up on this.
Can I give,
Yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
gonna give
Sure.
Rob a
Yeah.
chance because I gave everybody else a chance to comment.
So my recollection is I wasn't on the board when Chamberlain Whalen project was approved, but from what I know, we were able to get $10,000 worth of basically relief for traffic calming measurements as part of that subdivision approval. And now we're in a situation where we have to decide what the traffic calming measure is. None of us are traffic engineers. I don't know what like this seems like a precarious predicament to try to decide for a speed bump, speed table. Like without knowing any better, what I would do is where the trail exits from Hopkins School towards Chamberlain, I would put basically the ability for use it to press a button, have flashing lights, so they can cross the street into Chelsea. That's what I.
And you had a follow-up?
Yes, a couple of things. So
Go ahead.
I think that was discussed in the past, but that
Yeah.
might be more expensive than $10,000. The cost of, I lost it.
Okay.
I'll let you know if I come back.
Fair enough. So I propose the following, that we vote on a motion for the DPW to use these funds toward the installation of a speed table at the point on Chamberlain where there is the Center Trail crossing, or Center Trail exit, actually, right? And as the funds allow, to also do a center line painting on both Whalen and Chamberlain. Okay? Does that sound like a reasonable proposal to vote on?
I had one last comment.
Sure.
I think it's the last, I hope, for you guys. So, once again, the line in the center of the road is a good idea. We can't hurt to ask, I guess, but if you look at what we have in town, we probably have maybe 3 roads with a yellow line down the middle, and I think what John will say from DPW is that they only use those on major roads. You never see those on any of the side roads, but, you know, like I said, can't hurt to ask.
So
I have no idea.
they recently, when they did Ash Street over, they put one down the center.
Is Chamberlain considered, Jerry, is Chamberlain considered a scenic road?
Yes, it is.
It's definitely, to my knowledge, there's no scenic roads.
I don't think so, but there's nothing in the scenic road bylaw that forbids it. So,
No painting.
yeah. All right, so I will entertain a motion to direct the DPW to use the fund. Oh, this was not going to be a public hearing, and I cannot make an exception for you, the chair of the planning board, I'm sorry. To use the funds to install a speed table at the center trail, and as funds allow, to also paint a center line on Chamberlain and Whalen.
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. And we don't have to do roll call, so what do? We just raise hands for aye and, okay.
We have to ask
All
for
in favor?
discussion.
Oh, yep. Any final discussion? Okay?
Should we, final discussions with the chair?
Yes.
I can go along with the speed table, but I don't know that, I don't want to prescribe this, on my house in the street. That's how I feel.
I was kind of feeling the same way. I
So
didn't
it
want
would be a no for me, which I don't feel like is the right vote, but
Okay.
I just, because of my house.
So are you proposing a friendly amendment?
Who made the motion?
I was technically, I'm willing to partition those
Into
into
two
two
motions?
separate motions.
Okay, that'd work.
Okay, so the first motion would be the speed table, and the second motion would be the line.
Sure.
All right,
That's fair.
okay. So,
You second my friendly?
Sure, why not? Discussion?
I think it was in the past.
more discussion, go ahead.
I was just going to say, more than calming down the speed, lines have been proven especially helpful for senior citizens and young drivers, because it helps them, especially when it's at nighttime or driving in the rain or inclement weather. It's a safety overall factor, that's all.
Chair.
Yes.
I counter that argument that there's no sidewalks on Chamberlain, and if you put a line, you're actually going to push the cars against people walking on the street. So, I mean, that's another reason why I would not support it.
Let's go to a vote.
On the first one?
Our first vote will be on the funds being used for a speed table. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's all of us. I assume you're abstaining? Yeah, good. All nays, I should say? No? And abstain, 1. All right? Okay. Second vote is on the lines. And again, that would have to say as funds allow also to do these lines. All in favor say aye. Aye. That's 1, 2, 3. Nays? 3. And abstain, 1. So 3 to 3, that does not pass. Okay, we're all done with that one. Chamberlain tree planting location approval. I did not see anything in the in the accompanying materials. There's nothing in the admin page, so.
I think I got it today.
We apparently have a friend here from.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
If you don't remember, my name is Matthew.
Hi, Matt. So,
Down, Matt.
I think John is pulling up this display. Okay, so just put it face down. Okay. There we go. Now we have Fran labeled.
Now you can vote.
Now I
That's all it took.
Did you send me the photo?
I did at like 5-ish.
5-ish? Okay, so it's in my email.
I was a little bit late on that.
All right. So I'll just give the intro while he's pulling that up. So at the time that we voted on the Chamberlain tree pruning and tree removal for Eversource, we also placed a condition that they would be replacing trees, the 7 trees that they'd removed, in a different location in the Chamberlain Whalen neighborhood. And Matt has proposals for where the tree placement will go. And so as soon as we are able to look at that, he can explain that to
It's
us.
downloading. Sorry.
Okay?
I can start it, but while
Sure,
we're waiting.
go ahead.
So I actually put together 9 trees instead of 7, all native, like what was stipulated, and I kept them all on Chamberlain, since that just made the most sense to me. If I could fit them in there, that's where all the trees are coming out. So at 140 Hayden Row, on the Chamberlain side, I've talked to the homeowner, and they are happy with me planting 3 hemlocks. I tried to stick for most of the trees to be broadleaf hardwoods, but they were pretty insistent on it being an evergreen. But this is a tree that gets to about 70 feet tall, and has a lot of really nice bird nesting habitat, and it should be planted on town property, at their property. At 9 Chamberlain, I would like to plant a tree called a tupelo. It gets up to about 60 feet, and is a great pollinator tree, and once it has fruit, it's a great food source for birds. I'll be planting 1 at 9 Chamberlain, and then 1 at 14 Chamberlain. At 17 Chamberlain, the homeowner was interested in a black birch. This gets up to about 60 feet high, is a host species for several native insects. It has a really attractive textured bark that's pleasant to look at. 29 Chamberlain was interested in a red maple, but gets up to about 70 feet, has that vibrant, distinctive red color that we all know, and is a bee pollinator species. I have 1 tree slot at 39 Chamberlain, where we've yet to reach agreement on a species. It'll probably be a little bit of a smaller tree, maybe getting up to 20 or 30 feet, just based off of what the homeowner would like, as well as what would be appropriate for that site. And then the final tree is going to be at 45 Chamberlain. It's going to be a white oak that gets up to about 100 feet tall, attractive bark, and is a very important wildlife species as well.
Thank you. So, any questions for Matt from the board? Go ahead.
So the height of these new trees, there's no way that they're going to conflict with the power lines that we led this whole thing.
So most of them are planted on the side opposite the power lines. There are a few planted on the side with the power lines, and those are going to be set back far enough that it would have to be minimal trimming once they get pretty big. All of these trees should be able to provide some sort of shading canopy over the road. Except for, the few that are going to be on the roadside won't be really shading over the road, but will be very visible from the road as well.
And the second question, you mentioned a few times that you got to speak with the homeowners. Have you been able to speak with all the homeowners except the one that you're still in discussion about?
Yeah, these are all. Everything here has been approved by the homeowner.
Excellent.
Any other questions?
One quick comment. I know you mentioned that. First of all, I want to say thanks for doing this. I can't remember. I've been on the board 6 years, but I don't remember Eversource ever working with an individual landowner. So thank you for doing that. That's above and beyond. But to your point about the one homeowner that wanted the hemlocks, these are on town property, and it does seem like that would be kind of a blocking visibility kind of thing for people coming out of the driveway. So.
Oh, that's sort of what they wanted it for, was a bit of a screen from the road. They should be planted enough back from Hayden Row where it shouldn't be a major a major obstacle, but yeah, I'm not a road engineer.
From Chamberlain, not Hayden Road?
It's on it's 140 Hayden Road, but it's on the Chamberlain side.
Oh, so it's close.
Yeah, see, do you see the picture right behind his head? Yeah.
Yeah, there we go, right there. And those are all approximate locations. I'm going to go out with the homeowners before the nursery gets there and actually pick the specific spot.
So it doesn't look like it's a sight line visibility issues, but thanks.
Go ahead, Fran.
Sure, just I'll echo Dave's sentiment. I appreciate you guys working with the homeowners on this. I haven't seen in the past. My one question is, what's the timing on this in terms of the next steps as the trees planted?
When you plant trees, you want to plant them either in the fall or the spring. So we would be aiming for a fall planting.
Go ahead, Jane.
I remember when we were on the sidewalk, there was one individual resident who expressed interest in planting the new trees on the new extension Whalen. And if you could just speak to the sensibility of keeping them on the Chamberlain side as opposed to going on the other side.
So I drove down Whalen today. There's definitely some good spots for trees. My sentiment was that since all the trees that we took out were on Chamberlain, I would try to keep them as much as possible on Chamberlain.
And it appeared the residents in those suggested areas felt the same. Thank you.
Just one final question.
Okay, go ahead.
One thought. So the trees themselves, obviously, say can grow up to what size of? And I'm assuming they're not saplings that you're going to be planting.
So when we order from the nursery, we usually order trees that have a stem diameter of around 2 to 2.5 inches. How tall the tree is at that stem diameter depends on the species, but these would be noticeable saplings going in.
And if they were to not make it through the winter, will Eversource work with the homeowners to, get the fresh planting done?
So all the homeowners understand that caring for the tree is going to be their responsibility once we plant them. It would be responsible for watering. My gut would be that if the tree doesn't make it, I'm going in with 9 just in case a few of them don't make it, so that we'll still make the 7.
It's been my past experience that if you did use a nursery company, that they would guarantee the trees for a certain amount of year or years.
Yeah, I'm not really familiar with Weston nurseries.
I believe
Weston
they
does.
guarantee them for a certain amount of time. So to answer your question, I think that would be helpful.
I think it's awesome.
Yep. Are there any comments or questions from the public? Okay. So I would entertain a motion to approve this replanting plan presented by Eversource.
Before,
Go ahead.
Since there's one that's still undecided, is it like a conditional approval?
We can condition that on the only undecided on, the approval of the homeowner of the species to be planted, if that's fine with everyone?
I wouldn't want to hold it up. So.
Yeah. Okay.
The other thing is that you should probably have it baked in there that in case the nursery has some sort of inventory issues, changing a species should be left up to their discretion to fit the profile of a tree that we wanted to plant, but for some reason they just didn't have stock of.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to come before us again. That is appropriate, I believe,
As long as it's in consultation with the homeowners.
Yes,
Yes. Yeah.
yes.
To
Okay.
the chair. I
Yes.
think the issue was that you were concerned about the location and the number of trees,
Yes.
right? So species shouldn't necessarily matter. So you can approve the plan as shown with the number and locations of trees, and then done.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's reasonable. Yeah. Okay.
So does that modify the amendment at all, or no? Is that what it is?
I don't think anyone made
Well, no one
made
has done the motion yet, but I'll reiterate it. I would entertain a motion to approve the plan for the number and the placement of trees, replacement trees, on the Chamberlain, on Chamberlain Street by Eversource.
as shown.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye. Oh, discussion. I always forget that. I'm like, we're just discussed.
I believe this barely fits within the four corners
Sure.
of this, but while we have Matt here, is, just for the edification of the residents of the town, do we have a date for when the trees will be trimmed, removed?
Well, they were already done.
Yeah, all the tree work on Chamberlain's been done already.
I need to drive down there.
Or ask Gary. Okay, so, any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Okay. So passed. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank
Appreciate
you. Y'all have a lovely day.
You too.
Thank you, Matt.
Not to use the public, but the discussion after a motion is made is just about the motion. You can't discuss the topic.
Okay. Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Discussion after a
All the
motion
discussion
is only about the
topic has to
motion.
happen before the motion.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And just a reminder for my fellow board members, having sitting in the back, speak up if you can. So I think we're accustomed to having mics really close to us, and I know for the people in the audience, it's helpful if we just speak a little bit more loudly, or move
Bring the mics
the
closer.
mics a little closer until we
And
start getting
If
feedback.
they're angled up to the ceiling, you can just angle it down to your mouth a little bit too, so.
All right, so the next administrative item is related to Turkey Ridge and their open space conveyance. So, Mr. Gelsich, you want to just quickly explain to us why this is before us today?
Sure. So Turkey Ridge OSLPD has the requirement that they have.
Is this on?
Yeah, we think it's on.
All right.
Good.
All right, I think it's on. So Turkey Ridge OSLPD has a requirement to donate the open space, obviously. The timing that they had to donate it to the town kind of passed with the town meeting, and they're not able to get any building permits until they convey the land per our bylaw. So they're asking for an extension of that time to convey the land, which is provided for in the bylaw, so that they can get building permits, because they intend on donating it to the town, and the town can't accept it until town meeting. So they have to basically wait until the next town meeting to donate the land, and that would kind of put them out of schedule.
So just following along that logic, if we were to grant this extension, then is there any way to restrict potential occupancy permits until that land is donated?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just, they have to convey the land before the first building permit. So you can make it, they have to convey the land by the 5th building permit or a date certain, 10 days after town meeting, something like that. And condition it however you like. You can say no certificate of occupancies can be issued until the land is conveyed, or you can limit the number of building permits, or you can set a date, or all of them.
Do you have a recommendation for us on
don't.
which of those is most appropriate?
I would say it has to be done after town meeting, and then if you want to say no certificates of occupancy can be issued until the land is conveyed, that's fine too. That's both of those.
That's what I was thinking, is that let's give them the time to work through it, and then we just wouldn't allow any occupancy permits until the land is conveyed. And I see the applicant is before us. If we were to move forward with that, is that reasonable to you? That lets you start building, and it just means that...
Sure, I believe, I'm Attorney Jack Nealon for the applicant. I believe that they would like access to occupancy permits, so maybe if it could be something that they can only build so many and receive permits, but if they put up a house in the next 6 months, they wouldn't be able to sell it until the conveyance at the next town meeting. So in my email discussion with Chuck, he didn't see a problem with building permits or occupancy permits, as long as we, suggested some language for the next town meeting article, which we've already produced. And they just need time to pass in order to, like you said, in order to be able to.
Okay.
In order to be able to.
Remind me again, there's...
It's 9.36 acres of land.
But how many houses total? Is it
I don't
8 or
know.
9? 8 or 9, I
I
think?
think it was 9 that they ended up with. Yeah, so I mean, they wouldn't be able to get through more than 4, I'd imagine, by next town meeting.
Yeah,
But
okay.
they do want the ability, in order for cash flow, to be able to sell the houses, and get occupancy permits, and keep moving on.
I appreciate the optimism, given that the road is not even in yet.
Right.
I think that's probably a stretch, but I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'd be comfortable if we were to limit it to half of the occupancy permits before the land is conveyed. I think there's still a pretty substantial incentive for them to follow through entirely.
Clarification, you mean building permits or occupancy permits?
Sorry, he's requesting that they also could have occupancy permits before town meeting?
Right, but you could you could do half of the building permits and half of the occupancy permits. I'm just trying to clarify which one you are actually saying.
So I was proposing that we extend the deadline for conveyance in order to allow for building permits, and that we would allow up to half of the occupancy permits.
So they would be able to build all of them, but only get occupancy for half of them.
Yes.
John, I get it.
No, I have no issue with that. I just want to make sure everyone knows what they're voting on.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can we go
Yes.
for 6 out of 9? Just, we don't want to control how fast they build stuff, so I think there's no harm in holding off on 3 of the occupancies, correct?
I'm looking around to the group.
I'm fine with that.
So, through the chair, Dave, just tell me again, you're thinking of 100% of the building permits, but hold back on 3 of the occupancy permits.
Yes. I think that's fair, just to make sure they actually do donate the land to the town. If they wanted to hold back for some reason, we have control over those last 3 lots.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking out loud though. We don't have any control over those lots, and let's just say, for example, they changed their course and decided not to build 3 of the units, then it doesn't give the town any rights to that land. It just means that they can't be issued occupancy permits until then. So maybe I'm going too far down the pathway. I always go back to, we have guidelines in place. Building permits, to me, I think I could see building permits being started. Occupancy permits is probably a stretch, but I'm willing to give a little bit. But I'm just a little bit cautious about being too generous, because we've seen past developments where some lots they've opted not to build for whatever reason. It's perk testing or whatever else comes along, and I do want to make sure that land does convey.
It's not a big deal for me.
Through the chair, I even though initially I thought the idea was great, like 6 and 3 and stuff like that, but again, it's like it does, by putting a number on it, they could stop at 6. Okay, not to develop the rest. By putting a percentage, it actually ensures that the development continues, as well as the occupancy. We have a little bit more control, so I will go with the percentage.
So you want me to say 66%? Just kidding.
Well, again, but that's a number. I'm okay with 66% versus 50%.
That is-
I prefer
it's fine.
a percentage
I'm just
versus a
teasing.
number, though. No, I know it's a tease, but it's a smart one. I like it. I would go with a percentage. At 66, I would be in favor of that.
I'm good with, depending on how the board feels.
I would go 50%, just to kind of, okay.
Yeah. How do you divide a house by thirds?
Right, it's too much math for you, but I think allowing us to have some degree of additional control, giving the builder some latitude, both in building and occupancy, to address some of that cash flow, for continued operations, I would think that, but no more than that.
Okay, so kind of what I'm hearing is that we would, what's the right language here? We would extend the timing constraints for conveyance of the open space land and allow them to pull building permits for all units with maximum occupancy permits at 50% of the lots in the subdivision.
Sorry, could you some clarity?
Yeah, I'm just of a different opinion that the 50% building permits, 50% occupancy.
Ah, right. Okay.
So I'll make a motion, if I may, to extend the period of the acquiescence of the open space to the town to, John, help me out with the date after town meeting, within 10 days or 20 days?
2 weeks.
Let's call it 20 days, after town meeting, and allow for 50% of the building permits and 50% of the occupancy for the development.
Just out of clarity, if I may, is it 50% of the occupancy and then 50% of the 50%, or just 50% occupancy and building?
The latter.
Okay.
Second.
There's a second. Is there discussion on the motion?
Yes, please. Why are we restricting building permits? Why not just restrict occupancy?
Well, per our bylaws, we normally don't issue any building permits until the land is conveyed.
Correct.
But given timing here, we're giving them a little bit of flexibility so that they can actually start construction before the land is conveyed. But the risk is that is that something happens and the land is never conveyed.
Once again, I think we're restricting the builder. What does it matter if they build the houses? They can't occupy them. I mean, that's our, that's where I look at it.
We're not restricting the builder at all. The law states that we don't issue any building permit or occupancy until after the land is conveyed. So we're actually, I think, using the term doing them a solid by actually allowing them something.
It's just semantics.
It's not. It's a matter of timing on the whole
Okay,
process.
so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion itself?
Through the chair, I actually am more in agreement with David, is I'd rather allow the building permits, how many you want, I don't care, but the occupancy is 50%, because that way if they build and they cannot occupy, then it's like the builder's in more of a constraint to fulfill the obligation. And so that's why I'd be more in favor of allowing 100% the building permits and only 50% of the occupancy, because otherwise they're wasting money, and therefore they would want to pull the trigger.
So I just want to go back. We have a motion, we have a second. If the motion were denied, then we could actually entertain a motion, a second motion that would be different. But if there's no further discussion on the motion itself, all those in favor of the motion, yes, Rob?
So 50% in this case is 4. Build 4 houses, they can occupy 4 houses.
Correct.
That's it.
Yep.
Yep. And to the applicant's point, this is to improve cash flow, to let them continue forward with the process. So all those in favor of the motion, signify
Aye.
by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay.
All right, this is a majority, so the motion carries. All right, thanks, Mr. Nealon.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Take it easy.
And then the last admin one we have is a approval not required for 20 Pleasant and 9 Commonwealth. Do we have an applicant here for this? Yes? Yeah, that's fine. You can go ahead and sit at the table there. And if you can begin with introducing yourself, just give us your name and your address if you're a resident of Hopkinton, and then just give us the 30-second summary of what you're proposing to
My
us.
name's Elliot Peterzo with ASL and Associates from Hopedale, Mass. And what we're proposing is to convey about 700-800 square feet of land to the owners of 9 Commonwealth Ave from the owners of 20 Pleasant Street, and it's going to reduce that lot to about 28,000 square feet, a little less.
Here, Mr. Chair, just a suggestion. If the homeowner wants to come up and sit there, it's going to answer any questions.
If he wants to, he's welcome to join, but certainly not required. Can you just give us a little bit of the rationale for why you're doing this? It's always helpful for us on these A&Rs.
Yeah, sure. If you can see on the plan.
And I'm sorry, if you could just
Oh.
state your name and address.
Yeah, Ed Peterzo. So I'm the owner of 20 Pleasant.
20 Pleasant, okay.
And so in speaking with Derek and Kerry, just to show you on the screen, basically they didn't have much of a backyard, whereas 20 Pleasant was pretty extensive. So we had conversation, and they were interested in some of the property. So that's really as simple as it is, just to relocate the property line,
Okay.
give them a better backyard.
Mr. Gelsich, any town hall commentary on this?
So A&R, as you know, is all about lot area and frontage. This is not changing either one of the lots' frontage. It is reducing 20 Pleasant Street's lot area, but it would still comply with zoning. So therefore it is not a subdivision and is not rendering any lots non-conforming. Should not be an issue.
Any questions or comments from the board? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Endorse.
Thank you, Mary. To endorse this A&R for 20 Pleasant and 9
So
Commonwealth.
moved. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Through the chair, since we're in person now, you can sign it.
Wow.
So, should we sign it now?
Let's wait.
Well, they want to probably leave.
Oh, they need it now.
Yeah.
Okay, we will take a 3-minute break, and a couple of us are going to sign this really quick, and then we can send them on their way.
Great,
Excellent, thank you.
John, how many signatures do you need?
5.
Well, I think our newest member gets to sign first, right?
Yeah.
It's a tradition.
All right, stretch the legs.
sign it.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Come on, buddy.
Yeah, I can stay here.
Everyone else is standing. I'll just stretch it out.
Wasn't sure if the air conditioning was on too much for you.
But I'll just do a download for my website.
No.
Some of us are worse than others, right? Fine. Yeah, no.
Never been so quick to pull
Fourth time we got this up.
Not gonna let you guys do this.
You guys go?
Everybody sign?
Go sign. I need one more.
All right.
Whoever's closest. I know.
I mean, you all can sign it. There's no.
No, that's okay. It's really okay.
I'd rather come downtown and sign it.
Don't forget your mask.
No, you don't need a mask there, right?
No, I don't know, just teasing.
No, it's,
Last 2 years, we needed masks.
I know, I was wondering about that walking in. Like, no, they don't.
Oh, yes.
I was carry one with me.
See in
just in
person.
case.
I figured it's commission.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
How are you?
Thank you, John. Thank you.
Derek, take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, bye-bye.
All the
I should
best.
text her.
All right. John loves that. Sign in person. All right, next item on our agenda is continued public hearing for 103, 109 South Street. And I see the applicant, he is here, and I guess what I'd ask is that, probably gonna have some commentary with Mr. Paradis as well, so if it's okay, Phil, maybe if we have you join us at the table as well? This is all new for me, this face-to-face stuff.
Have you been shared at all during face-to-face meetings?
I have not, no.
I can stand.
All right, so just a quick reminder for where we've been through the project introduction, the staff report. We went through initial beta report. The Sidewalk in particular was incredibly helpful for us, so really appreciate the combination there. The next item for us is review of decision criteria. And I thought what made the most sense here, because Beta is actually reviewing this against our decision criteria, that at this point we would go through the remaining open items from the Beta review. I think most of, or all of which, they're recommending some opinion of the planning board. So that's what I thought would be most efficient. Does that make sense, Phil? Or to the applicant?
Yeah, sure. Just before we get too far, my name's Dave LaPointe with Beals and Thomas, just as a reminder for the record. And applicant from Southfield Properties 3 LLC, Harold Hagian's here as well as a couple of other members of our project team, if you have any questions related to some of the engineering, design, or traffic-related items too. So.
Okay. Like I said, I can go through this as well. I just figured that Beta has a recommendation. There's, in some cases, some response from the applicant, so it just made sense to work through this stuff.
Exactly. So, unfortunately, and for the record, Phil Paradis with Beta Group had an opportunity to review the plans and had some dialogue back and forth. Unfortunately, I left my portfolio on my desk, so I don't actually have the letter. So
I have
don't
it.
know if someone can.
It's on the screen.
It's on the screen.
I can
or
give you my computer, like.
if you wanted to, we could actually go, the remaining outstanding items are in the meeting packet.
Phil, do you want to iPad? It's got all the documents on it.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just when you thought you were getting out of it, Phil. Found a solution.
I have my glasses. See, since COVID, I've got blind and deaf.
So your comments are in here, but it's not updated, so we just want the
Okay.
And I just from a process perspective, I think what might be most helpful here is we'll have Phil outline the concern. I'm just going to do a quick look around and see if anybody has any issues. I think most of these, and we can go from there. So just as he mentions them, we'll kind of do a head nod yes, or let's talk about this further. And
Oh, that's beautiful.
we can work through it that way. Sound good? Pass that down to Fran.
Sure.
Let me just,
Apparently we're on schedule to the minute.
high-tech things. All right, so the first one is Z1.
Phil, I'm glad you're here. That's the most important part.
Yeah, I don't think there's much issue with Z1.
Okay.
But we're just giving you opportunity to say something if you want. It's it really revolves around activities that involve activities which are offensive, injurious, noxious, based on parameters outlined in your code. And they said all manufacturing of the site takes place in biologically clean rooms, yada yada yada. So I don't think there's a big issue. But
And I'm going to assume things that are injurious or noxious are probably create other problems. So I think we're probably okay with this one. All right.
That's fine.
Z2.
Yeah, Z2 is a special permit reduction in the parking spaces. So they're basically off the demand employees. So they provide an explanation. So it just, I think they're shooting themselves in the foot if they don't have enough parking, but, I don't have a
Through the
strong.
chair.
I've lost my vision in the pandemic as well, so I'm going to put my glasses on. Go ahead, Mary.
Through the chair, I was just going to say that from my perspective, this is fine.
Yeah.
What they've proposed for parking.
All right, Z4, additional screening, loading areas. Not sure that's a big issue. They have a natural ridge line that exists between the highway and the property, helps obscure views. So, again, it's a.
Yeah, so the question here is, do we need more screening between the property and 495? I'm comfortable with the plans as is. Not overly concerned with screening in 495.
Through the chair, if I would like to defer to when we're discussing the landscaping and the outline, so I wouldn't necessarily just say blanket yes right now, but can we go through that? Isn't that on here? It usually is.
Do we have a specific landscaping section? I don't think we do. We literally are just going against the decision criteria.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Okay. So I think we're comfortable with that one.
Yes.
All right.
All right, Z6, provide required sidewalk along the front edge of the property. Their explanation is requested a waiver from the sidewalk. There's a sidewalk across the street. They're providing a crosswalk to it. And I think the crosswalk issue is going to come up again, but.
Yes, Jane.
There was some discussion on the sidewalk as to where the location of the crosswalk would be. And some felt it should be further to the south than is planned. For some reason it made sense.
Yeah,
I don't know if they had any.
So we located it at that end of the site because that was where we could actually get an accessible walkway to the crosswalk from the building. Where if we were to locate the crosswalk at the other end of the site by the other driveway at the kind of northern end of the site. We provided a walkway to be able to connect to another walkway that goes to the adjacent property, but there's stairs along that walkway, so it's not as accessible as the other walkway is. So we felt it was better to include it on the other side of the building
I
at that
understand.
southern location.
Thank you.
So, but yeah, my observation is that doesn't go to the front door, so it's kind of who would ever use that walkway? But anyway, that's just observation.
Are we talking about a walkway or a crosswalk?
A crosswalk.
So could you have both?
So the crosswalk would link to the walkway, correct? And then the walkway would go to the door.
Not the front door. It goes all the way up to the side
Right.
to the loading dock, so that.
Would it hurt to have two
Yeah, there's
crosswalks?
Out on there?
maybe if you want to just show us on the chart there.
Yeah, so the currently proposed crosswalk is in this location here, and it links to the existing sidewalk that's on the other side of South Street. And the area where Dave was referring to was there's an existing walkway from 99 South Street that comes up to this northern driveway. So this is the area where we were saying the grades are steeper, so that's why we were thinking it would make more sense at the other spot where we can provide the accessible route. And then we do have a door on the side of the building here as well, which links up to the sidewalk.
So through the chair, so I apologize, it's a two-part question here. One, this is following up sort of Phil said. So say someone were to get, is heading south and one is on the sidewalk and crosses over, they would be, where the crosswalk ends would be what, grass? Or where does the sidewalk terminate, or would it be, because I'm looking at it, it seems where the pond basin is, where the crosswalk would end. So how would why would they use that sidewalk at all, or that crosswalk, I should say?
That if they cross over South Street onto our property, there's now, we've proposed a walkway, a sidewalk along the side of the building, which then has a door going into the building on that side, and then continues all the way along the side of the building to the back side of the building as well.
Okay.
So really the intent is that the walkway is probably more likely for employees. You know, visitors just coming to the building aren't really going to be walking there. They're going to be able to park in the visitor parking space at the front door. That the sidewalk, or excuse me, the walkway adjacent to the building and then the crosswalk are more for employees to, you know, take walks during the lunch, or you know, maybe they're going to another building down the street, and they could be using that employee entrance on the side of the building.
But if someone were to come who isn't an employee and were to take public transportation, I don't know how likely that is, how would they get to the building, enter the main entrance? But I'm assuming the main entrance is not the side entrance.
Correct. The main entrance is on that lower. Right,
So if they were to take the public transportation, they would cross over the crosswalk there and then cut across the lawn, or just want to confirm that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's my other question, just thinking about working in an office and how many people sometimes will go out and walk laps around the building just to get outside. I mean, as I look at this, they're gonna walk around the back, they're gonna walk to the front, and then they're either gonna walk across the grass or they're gonna cross, like, there's no way to, it just seems like it would be helpful to have a walkway across, in some capacity, across the front of the building. I mean, maybe it's not a requirement, maybe that's why there's a sidewalk requirement in there, but I just, it seems like that would be a pretty common behavior for people that work there that want to go outside and walk.
Through the chair,
yeah.
I personally would have no problem walking across the grass if I were doing that on my lunch hour.
Unless it's,
You know,
unless it's
yeah.
March and it's a nice day,
Yeah,
there's still
yeah.
snow and ice and
That is
whatever
true.
else.
That's true.
Jane?
Would there be anything to impede such a walkway, such as basin, a storm basin, or something else, or?
We do have a stormwater basin in the front there, and there are some existing trees that are along the frontage there that we had looked at the site visit that I'm not sure if they would become problematic in terms of getting a sidewalk past them without having to impact those.
Most of those trees were going to be removed, though, weren't they?
No,
Not
not along
Not
the
the
front.
ones in the
No,
front.
okay.
No. There was only,
It
I
seemed
think
to
maybe
me that there
one
would
right
be
close to the
enough.
driveway that was gonna be removed, that end of the driveway.
It seemed to me there would be enough room somewhere on that front lawn. It's beautiful. Seems to me something could be worked out, but I'm just one person.
Yes, Fran?
Chair, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna ask, so if we were able to fit a sidewalk along the front there, it still doesn't necessarily address the location of the crosswalk, though, because if someone was still to come out the front door or want to go in the front door, they'd have to get across steps. So in terms of an accessible route, they're getting a more easily accessible route by going up that crosswalk in, I guess, again, in the side door,
Yeah.
but I guess.
Understand, the
accessible.
accessible route would still be potentially a longer route,
Yes.
but for the people that are comfortable walking a few stairs, that would be a very, I mean, there's an accessible option, but it might be a more optimal location for the people that don't need the accessible option.
Sure.
Through the chair, again, this is the minutia details here. I'm more thinking like, like if you guys, it's yours, but like a decorative path, something that people can do the loop round. But again, that's landscaping.
Yeah, I was probably a little bit more into that camp, like the sidewalk definition of concrete or what have you. And here, I don't think you necessarily do that. I'm okay with the crosswalk there on the south side. But having a decorative path, to Ron's point, could be something that aesthetically kind of goes with the flow. The front of it's kind of nice. Gets you over to the north side of the building, allows people to lapse around. There's people that do that. I suppose what people do during lunchtime or just exercise, but I don't think it would be a detriment.
So let's do this. There's kind of three different things that we're talking about here. One is the waiver for a sidewalk, which it sounds like we're going to get to a waiver in a little bit, but but it sounds like people are not overly concerned about that. The second is the crosswalk location, which, to some degree, what's most important is that there's an accessible option, and ideally that the crosswalk is in a place where the crosswalk would get used, because we all have seen situations where people will bypass the crosswalk and cross someplace else because it's more convenient. And then third is, I think, some recommendation, certainly not required, but, from a walkability perspective, some type of path across the front that would allow people to, walk in loops or whatnot around the property. That's kind of what I'm hearing from the group. I think like I said, the sidewalk, we'll get to that when we get to the waivers. I think the path can be a recommendation on our part, but I don't know of anything in our bylaws that would require that. And then I do think that the crosswalk location is probably the most important for us to discuss here, because it's in the kind of that gray space. The crosswalk is what makes us more comfortable not having a sidewalk, and just want to make sure that crosswalk is in the right location so that it gets used appropriately.
Through the chair, regarding the crosswalk and crosswalk only, I think it is the correct spot, because it is for the vast majority of people who would be using public transportation, our employees, and going in that side. I think so. I like the idea of the crosswalk location for that discussion.
Chair.
Yes, Rob.
From the Milton line to the traffic lights, lights register, do you have any, how many crosswalks are on South Street? It seems like it's not gonna be, people aren't crossing that street all the time. That's the reality. Is there any crosswalks on that section from Milton to?
So,
intersection?
to your point, I don't think people do a lot, but there is also a Dunkin' Donuts and a restaurant nearby that's across the street.
That's the only use
so
case I could think, is people either going for walks at lunch, or if there's a jogger that's trying to get out for a run at lunch, or going to that Dunkin' Donuts. There's not public transportation. If it is, it's Uber or taxi.
Oh, there's a bus stop down there. By the Dunkin' Donuts, there's a bus stop. And there's one further up.
But I don't know if there's any crosswalks on South Street here. Like this would be the only one.
I agree, but I guess the point is that right now there's a requirement for a sidewalk, and what we're saying is that we're willing to consider allowing to not have a sidewalk, but we're saying that if you're not going to have a sidewalk, then you should have a crosswalk somewhere. That provides the same purpose.
No, through the chair, so on that whole side, to my, what I've seen, there's no sidewalks on that side of the street, the 495 side of South Street. So I agree, like having a sidewalk that goes nowhere doesn't make sense. But this is also a unique situation which is the only crosswalk. So for anybody coming from other buildings, like they would, potentially that would be the only place for them to cross. It wouldn't be just this property.
Through the chair, that's the point of having the improvements, right?
Right.
So-
And through the
We're
chair also,
improving-
I don't think we really know if there's no other crosswalks there. I would like to take a drive.
So let's just go back to the crosswalk. I mean, to Ronnie's point, the crosswalk and its location, it's primarily intended for employees. There's an employee entrance. It's accessible. It's the shortest pathway. We comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna get to the sidewalk waiver in a little bit, but let's move on if that's okay. Yes, John?
Just a point on the crosswalk too. DPW is gonna have to okay it. I don't know if the applicants talked to DPW about this, if they even are okay with putting a crosswalk in there. So I think if the board is gonna condition any crosswalk onto the permit, it should be somewhat ambiguous to allow for DPW to okay it and not require the applicant to put the crosswalk in, even if DPW is gonna say no.
Okay. Understood. I guess we'll add that to the potential conditions.
I'll do that right now.
All right, Z7.
Luminaires, there's a bit of spillage onto the street, not a big issue. It's not like it's a residential area.
I'm okay with the little light spilling onto South Street.
Yes, fine.
I'm seeing yeses, so I think we're okay there. U1. I don't know if this one is so much a question for the planning board. This confirmed destination and easement rights of the existing sewer line for reuse. Has the applicant done that?
So we did, we tried to research existing record plans for that sewer line along South Street, and to our best ability, and we were not able to locate anything. Basically, we're just reusing the existing connection that's being used currently by the existing buildings, but we weren't able to find anything to kind of track how far, or where it goes to down the road. But like I said, just reusing the existing line, or the existing connection.
Yes. And actually, sorry, just for the viewers at home, if you don't mind coming up to the microphone as you talk so that they can hear you.
Yep. Good evening. I'm Jeff Murphy, civil engineer with Beals and Thomas. I just want to respond to this one or elaborate on this one a little bit, this U1. So we actually did do some research into the existing sewer connection, and again, as Dave mentioned, we are going to reuse the existing sewer line. So basically, it comes down to kind of the north corner of the site here, and then it does a 90-degree turn, basically paralleling the right-of-way. And based on we contacted the sewer department, and they actually provided us with an as-built sketch that shows how the sewer ties in as part of the South Street sewer project that was done in the late 90s. They came through with a gravity sewer, and they provided stubs to the various lots. So the stub that was put in here was actually across from the driveway for 99 South Street, and that's actually where the sewer for our existing buildings ties in here. There was another sewer stub put in further up here, but it never, nothing was ever connected into that, presumably because the elevations were more favorable to tie into this point. So we did provide documentation showing the destination of the sewer connection that ties into South Street here.
And so, sorry, just to clarify, and is that sewer connection actually, is it on this property? Or is it on the neighboring property?
It's probably in the right-of-way, just opposite the driveway for 99 South Street. There's basically kind of like two turns it does. It doesn't show up on this, but we provided a sketch that kind of shows that and some record plans that showed the stub that was installed in this area. and that's what it ties into. So that stuff is technically off the property.
Yeah, and I guess that's the point of from Beta is that it's the sewer line is potentially crossing an abutting property, and there's not an easement of any kind to do that. So is there any risk here of not being able to tie in because there isn't an easement and we don't necessarily know if it actually crosses the abutting property? That's kind of my understanding. Is that right, Phil?
Yeah, it's a strange situation.
Okay. So, question for Mr. Gelsich. I mean, if this goes through and they run into a problem with the sewer connection in some capacity, then how does that, like what's the pathway forward?
They'd have to get some kind of approval from the owner of 99 South Street to do work on their land and to access that sewer line. I think they mentioned there's another stub in front of their property that they could potentially use. No, there's not?
There is, but we don't need to, because we're just gonna tie into the existing sewer line that already exists, so we don't have to touch anything.
Oh, you're gonna tie in upstream.
We're tying in upstream
Gotcha.
of this point in question, which is over here, so we're just gonna basically connect into that existing sewer line on our property, and we won't have to even worry
Okay.
about messing with whatever's going on.
Yeah, so they're not
Got
going to have to access the other.
Yep. Okay, that's helpful.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, Fran?
Question for the chair. Is the volume that's going through those pipes going to change with the construction? Or will it essentially stay the same?
I mean, it's likely to be different. I don't have the exact numbers on how it would be different. It's an existing 6-inch sewer.
I was just
Yeah.
curious. I mean,
Just making sure the existing sewer line that you're referring to has the capacity to support the new
correct. Right, that was where I was
building
going.
needs.
If something were to happen, and it seems like it's working out based on today's volumes, but the volumes are going to be 2x. Is the facility as it stands today capable of handling increased potential increased volume?
Through the chair, I think that's going to be a DPW issue. They're going to have to get a sewer connection approval, I would assume.
Way above my
They're
pay
gonna
grade, but
and have capacity, yeah.
question.
All right. So I guess what I'm hearing is that maybe this doesn't impact our review. There is a process in place that if they needed to enlarge that for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to have approval from DPW to connect to the sewer line.
Good.
Outside of our
Yeah.
scope.
I'm looking around. If people are comfortable with that, Dave? Okay. Thanks for the additional information. LA1.
So they are not conforming to the 5-foot planting area around the perimeter of the building. And then they give some detail of what that would, approximately 216 feet of grass strip is 4 feet wide when requirement is 5, and 114 feet of 2.5 feet wide, 203 feet of variable width between 2 and 4 feet. So, looks like they have between 2 and 4 feet majority around the building, obviously acceptable.
So for the applicant, any rationale to go, I mean, what's the rationale to go less than 5 feet?
Just based on the size of the building that we're trying to fit into here, and then putting in the 24-foot wide driveway, it's basically what's left over, essentially. Is all, it's the strip along the perimeter of the property that we're talking about.
So,
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
Perimeter
Don't mention
or
building, but just
around the
mention
building?
parking lot.
perimeter of the park.
Perimeter of the
Yeah,
parking lot.
perimeter of the
Okay.
parking lot.
Perimeter of the parking lot. So I'm guessing this is tightest on the south side there, where you have that, yeah, right there, because there's some pitch there, and it's pretty tight to fit everything in. I know when we did the site walk, we weren't exactly sure where the actual property line was. Is that the?
Right, and there's a retaining wall that's going in as part of that, so that's what's kind of constraining things as well by putting the wall in there. It's limiting on how much then is left to actually have as a grass strip.
So if we were to specify that there is a 5-foot planting area, then how do you accommodate that?
We ask if we can make the driveways narrower than the standard 24-foot wide. Or I think there is a little bit of a strip adjacent to the building that maybe that could get narrowed in some locations to help provide a little bit more of a perimeter strip.
So either the driveway gets narrower, the strip between the driveway and the building goes away, or the other one you didn't mention is that the building gets
Or
smaller.
the building gets smaller, sure.
Ronnie?
Through the chair. Currently, by my recollection, when through the sidewalk, it didn't look like there was a 5-foot planting area currently anyways. Would that be a correct assessment?
Probably in some locations, that's probably accurate, yeah.
Okay. And mostly because there is that retaining wall there that's preventing it. So it's not like you're asking for something unusual, that there's always something already there, where in some areas it may get better, some areas get worse. Okay, great.
And I'm curious, and maybe I'm curious as to why there isn't a waiver request around this. If there is a, yes, John.
So they added the waiver request later. So I didn't update the outline, but if you look at section 2.9.1.1, there's
Okay.
two additional waiver requests. This one, and then at least 10% of the interior of any parking lot having 25 or more spaces shall be maintained with landscape, including trees and planting areas of at least 4 feet in width.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, Fran?
I have a question to the chair. What is the width of retaining wall that you need to put in place?
I think that has,
We may not have gotten that copy yet.
I think I have the wall drawn at, I think I drew it at 3 feet, which is probably a little generous. I mean, it depends on the type of block that ultimately gets used. If they end up using a little bit smaller block, it might be a little smaller than that. So there might be a little bit of wiggle room there, but I don't know if you'd be able to pick up the full, 5 feet, especially in this corner is kind of the tightest, this southeast corner.
Yeah, I guess I look at it and say it's 2.5 feet. Right? Yeah. It's math purposes. Then it allows you another 2.5 feet for a crash. Right? In theory, that would be 5. I mean, given the fact that it is a retaining wall, it's not some other factor, overt factor that hinging on that. 2.5 feet, something like this. You have a retaining wall, it's not 5 feet. I don't think it's a unreasonable request right now.
Through the chair, it's authority, that's very precedent, it being that way. I think that's important too. It's not like it's already, it was 5 and then they're cutting it back, there's already a slim strip there.
Existing condition. And through the chair, this just piling on the tight corner that he refers to on the southeast, that's along 495 and part of the back of the neighboring property along 495. So I think that there's less concern where that exists as well. So.
Okay. So we'll get to a waiver vote in a little bit, but it sounds like we've beaten that one up pretty good. LA4.
Yeah, this is the waiver request, right?
LA4 revised parking lot layout and provide supporting documentation to show that 10% of the parking lot interior is maintained with landscaping, including trees and planting areas of at least 4 feet in width. Beta's comment provided a table comparing required/provided landscaping areas.
So for clarity, this is not a waiver request, correct? It is?
This
I
is?
can't see that.
Yes,
button.
there's a waiver request.
Okay, thanks. Because I have the previous one updated on what I'm looking at, but not that one.
provided table.
LA.
Do we have it, excuse me, through the chair?
Yes.
Do we have a table comparing the required and provided landscape areas?
So they list it right in the
In the plans?
narrative. So they have approximately interior parking lots, islands, including the perimeter area. So it all depends on if you include in the perimeter area, whether it's, if you include the perimeter area, they have 16.2%. If you don't, they have 7.5%, so.
Okay.
So part of the challenge with this one is that I think that requirement is typically envisioning a much larger parking area, parking lot, with rows of parking, with then islands maybe at the ends of each of the parking rows, or maybe islands within the rows. Most of the parking that we have provided here is basically just along, you know, the perimeter or back, essentially line of the lot along one side of the building. There is an area in the center that has, you know, parking kind of on both sides, so we included that island there, but it doesn't really, our layout doesn't really kind of fit the definition or the requirement that I think that this requirement typically looks to in terms of the 10% interior landscape areas.
So, sorry, just to go back, and John, maybe you can describe the what is the actual requirement? Do you have could you pull up the language? And I just want to make sure I understand what the intent of the.
Do you need to see it, or can I read it to you?
You can read it.
All right, so it says at least 10% of the interior of any parking lot having 25 or more spaces shall be maintained with landscaping, including trees, and planting areas of at least 4 feet in width.
An interior would be defined as the space with parking all around it, which hence his point is, since there isn't really any interior space, it just doesn't seem to apply here.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
the
kind of
zoning
my.
bylaw doesn't define the interior of the parking lot as a term, so it's basically subject to the planning board's
Okay.
interpretation.
Makes sense. Any other questions or comments about that? All right. We have a waiver vote anyways, but it makes sense to me.
Through the chair, just, there's 3 waivers. I did not include findings to address those waivers, so it may be important for the planning board to justify the waivers through a finding, should that time come.
T3. Site plan provides 24-foot wide drive aisles between sections.
Yeah.
of
So
perpendicular
this is typical of parking garages. You know, you get your columns, kind of don't fit sometimes, and I think that's what Stephen was pointing out here, is that the columns reduce the width temporarily to 21 feet wide. I don't know how big an issue is that. Most people are much more conscientious when they drive in a parking garage, but again, that's kind of doesn't completely meet the requirement to have 24 feet wide aisles.
All right, so just so I understand, so there's columns in the parking garage that in certain particular spaces where there's columns, it shortens the distance, the width of that aisle.
Right. And it's only, Jeff, what is it? It's only maybe four locations or so, somewhere around there.
It's
not,
funny, I don't.
It's not every column.
Do we have any other parking? I
was
guess
just thinking the same thing.
EMC has parking garages.
Yeah.
Dell EMC. It's funny. I can think of how many parking garages I've been in Boston where it just feels really, really tight.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't really have a sense for what our bylaws are, if that's dividing something that's nice and open and spacious, or if we're taking those already tight guidelines and we're making them that much smaller here.
So
I've been to several. I live in Boston, so I know people park much tighter than,
Oh, yeah.
than
Through you,
what
Mr.
these
Chair.
bylaws say. So I don't have a problem with. I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Okay.
You know, so.
Yep, Dave?
just assuming, I don't know for a fact, but assuming that we have no separate garage requirements, maybe that would be good for the ZAC to look at doing.
We have in town, you have many roads that are only 18 feet wide, so.
Yeah.
That's true.
In a garage, when you're going at, 5.
But we also don't necessarily on those roads have parking spaces that back into them where you need some radius to get into the spot as
Right,
well.
right.
But if you're comfortable with it, and I trust your guidance there. For me personally.
Through the chair, I'm fine with it.
All right. Any other discussion? All right. T4.
T4, I think, is resolved. They're gonna move it's a solar-powered sign that's just gonna light up for the crosswalk, so.
Okay.
I
It's
don't
resolved.
think there's any issue, yep.
T7.
T7 is the location of the crosswalk, right?
So we already
So I think
discussed.
you've already talked about that sufficiently.
Resolve that. SW9.
So SW9, again, the issue is that there's not much area for stormwater features. The building takes up the majority of the site. They've done some testing. They only had, up in the upper left corner is a fairly large subsurface infiltration system that currently there was only one test pit done in it, and it had significant depth of fill. So that is not allowed to put an infiltration system in a fill area. They propose to take that fill out and put back sand. And also in the front right corner is an open basin, and that has a ledge 2.5 feet down. But as was pointed out, the regulations allow up, it has to exceed 2 feet, so they actually meet it there. Again, they're gonna do a little bit of extra work to make sure it does infiltrate, so what they've provided is probably the best that they can do, given the constraints on the site. We, as is typical, we would want to have an official of the town to observe the excavations to make sure that they are actually free of fill and also meet the design assumptions that they used to develop the calculations for the stormwater. So long and short of it is, I think they're okay, as long as the town gets to be able to look at the excavated infiltration systems prior to.
So, question: do they have to do any kind of perk test after that fill is replaced with sand? And I guess I'm just sensitive because we've had a number of stormwater failures over the last couple of years, and yeah. Go ahead.
So typically, we would request a sieve analysis of the soils, just make sure there's not a high number of fines, clays. So typically, a sand or a gravel mixture is fairly permeable. So we would probably not be too concerned.
So in your professional opinion, what they're proposing is going to address the potential issues here?
Right. And again, if these typical projects have observations by, the town designated.
Okay, so we would need a condition that the town official observed the excavation and filling of the fill area.
Yeah.
Fill.
Question, Chair.
Yes.
So when you talk, just put it in layman's terms, how much fill is it going to be? I look at fill and I say fill.
So we would expect that the fill be moved below the footprint of the system to natural grade. I don't know if think it's gonna be like 4 feet below that one, the upper one. I don't, and they are gonna excavate a foot for the front one, but that one's not in fill, so they're just gonna make sure it's.
Yeah. This one also has some fill in it as well. And we put notes on the plans that they have to over excavate down to the sea layer, the parent material.
Yeah, so I think I looked at that one and it looked like the bottom was at or about the natural soil level, so I think you're gonna do it. Anyway, so.
Where does the fill then go to? Where does it excavate?
So depending on what it is.
What is the fill? I mean, you talk about fill, it's just all the dirt, junk, and rock, it could be anything.
Yeah, it could be anything, and they did specify a color and a texture, but it can be anything, and that's not natural. But they could probably, if it's not that bad, they can use it and fill in other areas of the site. It's just that you don't want to try to to make sure that it's permeable and not contaminated.
Yeah.
So.
It's just helpful to understand the context.
All right, any other questions about that one?
Thank you, Phil.
Forget that you said.
SW10. We just talked about that. Condition requiring the town or its agents observe excavation.
Yeah.
SW12.
It's a standard, include the stormwater pollution prevention plan signed.
Yep.
When you're doing it, you include the contractor, the whole 9 yards.
I think that is the last one from the beta review. So, if we go back to, sorry, pages here. So if we go back to the decision criteria, for the major site plan review, the board must determine if the proposed application conforms to the site plan standards as contained in section 210.136.1 of the zoning bylaw. So let's just take a pause there. Any other questions with regards to conformance to the section 210.136.1 for the major site plan review? Okay. On the parking reduction, the board must determine the provision of parking spaces proposed will be adequate for all parking needs. We didn't talk a lot about parking tonight. I think we did previously.
Sidewalk.
And, yes, Ronnie?
Just at no point I do remember we talked about any handicap parking. Is there going to be a certain number delineated to
Sure, yeah.
bylaws? Okay, thank you.
Yes, yep.
Any other questions or comments about the special permit for parking reduction? And that criteria. We're okay there. Stormwater management permit, the board must determine if the proposed work complies with the Hopkins stormwater regulations, which in turn requires compliance with Mass DEP stormwater standards. And if waivers are requested, the board must determine whether it is appropriate to grant them based on whether the action is allowable by federal, state, and local statutes and regulations in the public interest and not inconsistent with the purpose and intent of the bylaw. And I appreciate Phil and the beta team because I think that they've gone through this in great detail, certainly in greater detail with more knowledge than likely any of us could do. So we trust your guidance.
Can I ask
Yes,
a
Mary.
just general question? The permit plan set that's on the website and that you have cited here is April 14th, 2022. It appeared that a few details of the stormwater plan that I see up on the page that's open right now were slightly different than the one I was looking at. So I was just wondering what date plans you're dealing with right now.
July 11th is the last revision.
Okay. We do not have that latest
So
set.
the date that's shown in the title block is the original issue date. And if you go above it, there's revisions.
Okay.
So, here, let me kind of.
So even though the one, it says it's uploaded on 414.
So they submitted new plans as part of their letter response. It's at the bottom of the letter.
Oh, it's in the letter, so it's not shown as
There's
permit
not a separate
plans.
standalone plan because they submitted
Yeah.
it as a letter with plans. So this is what this is what I'm looking at right here.
Yeah, but do you know which letter is it?
The most recent one,
717?
714.
714.
So 717 was Beta's response to the
Got it.
applicant's letter. 714 was the
Thank you.
applicant.
So there's plans within that letter. Okay.
Correct, yeah, and
Thank
so
you.
that's what I'm looking at here, and this title block here shows that the revision date is 7/11/2022, even though the issue date is April 14th.
Trying to get to the plans. There they are. Thank you.
So I think we can move on to the waivers, which we've talked about all of them. I'll just quickly read through them, but the requested waivers, the first one, and we can go ahead and, I think we can go ahead and vote on these, if there's no further discussion, but the first one would be from section 210.136.m to allow for a waiver from construction of sidewalks along the entire frontage of the site. No additional sidewalks are proposed.
Do we need findings on that at all?
I just checking here because I think there is a note in our proposed findings to address that.
Right.
Is there? I should ask too. I don't know if there's any public input on this, but if there is public input, we welcome it. I don't think that's likely here, but if there's no further discussion, yes, Dave.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to point out that I had missed one of the previous meetings and I did not watch the video, so I'm going to abstain from voting.
Okay. Thanks, Dave.
So do you have a comment, Mr. Chair, on the proposed waiver for the sidewalks with the, maybe this is something addressed to the applicant, is the thought of having a path or something that Ronnie talked about earlier as a substitute, or would that potentially constitute a sidewalk? Having a path instead of a sidewalk. A path and sidewalk.
Probably not, because it wouldn't be up along the frontage. Because the requirement is that the sidewalk be along the frontage. And so if they're setting the walkway back from the frontage of the right-of-way, it wouldn't constitute the sidewalk and then wouldn't satisfy that requirement.
As defined, so we'd still need a waiver.
Correct.
Okay.
So the private sidewalk on Saddle Hill is not actually a sidewalk.
Correct.
That's what you're telling me. Okay.
That's why they could post signs telling people not to go on.
And I would imagine there's standards to build a sidewalk as well.
Yeah, All right. So there's. Yeah, go ahead, Fran.
I'm okay with the waiver, but I don't know if I still would like a path. I would like to have that discussion, as a condition, something that you can discuss with the applicant, their appetite.
I am more of like a recommendation. Like I said, I'm the one that came up with the idea of a decorative path. I think it's fantastic, but I don't know if it's prescriptive. And I think if the applicant thinks that it would benefit the site and for the employees there, I'm 100% in favor of making it as a recommendation, but I would leave it as a recommendation.
So I guess question for the applicant. You can see the planning board seems to like the idea of a path of some kind going across the front. And we haven't heard from the applicant on that at all. I'm curious if the applicant has any thoughts on that. Harold, if you want to come up to the mic. And again, if you could just state with your...
Yes, I'm Harold Nahigian. I'm the manager of Southfield Properties, the property owner. And a pathway across, if that's a desire of the board, I'm not going to stand in your way. I'm actually sympathetic to it.
Okay, great. So yes, Jane.
During the sidewalk, which I appreciate everyone going to, there was a path similar to what I think we're talking about between the building on the south side and your current building. And that would be a nice segue to continue that if at all possible.
99, right?
Mhm.
All right, so then I'm gonna recommend we do put a condition in for a
Pathway.
pedestrian pathway across the front of the property, and I think to the comments here, we're comfortable providing some, you know, we're not gonna dictate exactly what that is, but I think we'll let you guys figure that out.
It was just a gravel path that meandered
So-
through the property. It was very attractive.
Yes, Phil?
Just, if you look at the left corner there, it's a fairly steep grade in the front of the building, so I think it may need some flexibility in terms of whether they can do it or not, safely for a path. You know, if you're gonna want employees walking around.
Okay.
So I think maybe,
So your advice would be to not require a path, but to recommend a
recommend it if
pedestrian
if
path.
it can be done safely, right?
Okay. That's fair. All right, so I will entertain a motion to accept the waiver from section 210.136.m, which would allow for a waiver from construction of sidewalks along the entire frontage of the site.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? One abstain. Motion.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Paul is also not eligible to
Ah.
vote.
Thank you.
Oops.
Exactly. We good?
Just doing the count. We got just enough for a special permit.
That's all that counts.
All right. Next requested waivers from section 210.124.1. Parking lots shall contain a planting area a minimum of 5 feet wide around the entire perimeter of the lot. Exceptions may be made in cases where the perimeter of the lot does not abut adjacent property, subject to the approval of the planning board. Any further discussion on this before I entertain a motion?
Again, my question is findings. Do we need to specify the issue of the, a retaining wall is taking up approximately 2.5 to 3 feet of that 5-foot perimeter? And we're accepting that specifically, or anything else like that
Yeah,
to have it on the record?
I will say I struggle a little bit. I'm trying to think of what the intent is of that 5-foot buffer around the parking area, because it's not screening. It's aesthetics maybe, but I mean there is it. That would be screening, but I mean 5 feet isn't going to do anything anyways. There's no planting. There's no screening requirement. So.
Through the chair, I wonder if that's the snow.
Well, with the retaining wall there, that's gonna help. We'd have to push it further beyond the retaining wall.
It's an interesting question as I think about snow removal here. The entire south side, the entire south drive.
Yeah.
Has the applicant given any thought to where they're going to put that snow?
We did designate some snow storage areas on the site. And I think if it turns out that there's, large snowstorms kind of one after another throughout a winter, that there may not be enough room to store it on site, it would likely just have to be loaded up and trucked off-site.
Okay.
Chair, can I ask
Yes.
a question? At the end of that property where it butts 495, is there going to be a fence at all, or is it just a retaining wall and then whatever landscape, whatever trees or shrubberies on the 495 parcel?
Right, we're not really proposing any kind of fence. There's an existing fence along that property line, but it's a wire fence, essentially. It's nothing very substantial. But from our parking lot, it actually goes up before it then goes back down to 495, if maybe that's kind of what you're thinking of.
There's a big berm there.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, right.
So no place for snow.
Yes, Dave?
So just a question about the waivers, and I wanted to ask John, you had mentioned establishing some findings before. Is it a good policy to just put a little description for each of these waivers, the findings?
So just in terms of precedent, so that you have other developers coming in saying, well, you granted a waiver for them for this, and then to justify it, if it's 5, 10, 15 years down the road, it's good to put findings in to say, we're granting this waiver because X, Y, and Z is unique to this site. You don't have to do it. It doesn't have to be overly descriptive. You could say, due to the unique existing nature of the parking area, we are waiving the width requirement for the landscaped area, but
Yeah,
it's
for
good
all-
policy to do it. It's not necessary.
But for all those reasons is what I was thinking, why I asked the question.
So I'm just gonna throw something out there because I guess what worries me a little bit is, are we trying to cram too much in this site? And I really, really like the work that the applicant has done. But when I think of like that 5-foot buffer on the parking lot, I mean, it has some purpose to me. And again, I can't quite pinpoint exactly what problems that might cause, other than maybe snow removal issues. But I'm also just a little bit cautious about granting waivers on things that, you know, I go back to the findings mindset as like, well, what, just speaking openly here, what rationale do we have to grant a waiver when there doesn't appear to be anything exceptional about the site that would warrant granting of the waiver?
Chair, I agree with that sentiment. If that retaining wall and that narrow strip didn't already exist for the 20 years, so if creating a waiver just because is different than, well, it already exists, and we're asking them to do additional. So that's why I'm okay with this waiver for this situation, purely because they're not asking, it already is there. There's this narrower strip. But again, otherwise, I agree.
Jane?
I agree with that. I mean, when you look at the retaining wall, it's already part of the 5-foot buffer. It's, you know, it's existing, it is there. I don't think we can take it out either, or ask them to take it out. That would be silly.
So, Mr. Chair, I think you just kind of got your answer, because that could be the explanation of the finding, is that it's existing that way in the
Yeah.
previous building.
Does the south perimeter of the building shift at all relative to what's there now?
Is it pretty consistent?
I think the building itself is actually a little bit farther from the property line, but we're adding that driveway with the sidewalk in next to it, so.
Okay, so the building is actually, you're actually creating a little bit more space there in order to enable that sidewalk.
Right.
Okay.
Chair, question on the north side, where there's, I think the retaining wall on the north side as well, or no?
Yeah, there's a proposed retaining wall on the north side
Alright,
here.
so all the way through about 2.5 to 3 feet, and then the other 2 feet from that grass area, correct?
Yeah, so on the north side, like, this has the 5 feet, like, all along here. The only spots we couldn't provide it was down at this south driveway here in that corner.
And I just remember that being really tight. Given that, where you make the building small.
But they've already made it smaller. But from their existing footprint, that's why it's like. I remember seeing it, and again, I have no idea why there's a 5-foot rule to begin with, and with a retaining wall and 2.5 feet already, that is by math 5 feet, just not 5 feet of green space. It's 2.5 feet.
So just to
All right,
comment on
yes.
that, just on that statement real quick, I think it's an aesthetic thing, so you don't have pavement into pavement, you know,
Yeah.
between two
Could very well
different
be.
properties.
All right. Any other comments before we? If not, then I will entertain a motion to grant a waiver from section 210 124.e related to parking lots containing a planting area a minimum of 5 feet wide around the entire perimeter of the lot. Exceptions may be made. I guess I don't need to read that part, so.
So moved.
Any further discussion?
Just as long as the file, I like.
Well, I was gonna say yes on the findings or no on the findings, or do we need to do them now?
I don't think we need to do them now because we're gonna get to findings.
Okay.
And maybe if you're comfortable jotting down a proposed finding for this waiver, that'd be great.
Okay, I don't have anything to type with though.
Would you like a pen?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, passing them right down.
There's room at the end.
Nice try, Dave.
No, I'm fine with that.
Dave, what are you moving?
I'm not voting anyway, so I don't need to pay attention.
That's fair, you're right, right. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
And Dave, you're abstaining as well.
Yes, abstaining, yes,
Okay.
sir.
All
I told
right.
you I wasn't gonna pay attention.
Yep, so that carries.
I'll kick you under the table.
And then the last one, 210.124.e, at least 10% of the interior of any parking lot having 25 or more spaces shall be maintained with landscaping, including trees and planting areas of at least 4 feet of width. I think we've talked about this. Assuming no further discussion, I'll entertain a
Discussion.
Yes.
Right, so can you make the, you take the position or argument that requirement of having 10% of the interior space and now kind of being outside? Just because of the way that this is laid out, the trees, the planting area is disseminated from the center.
Yeah, I think that's their argument, that if you include the perimeter, then the percentage of space is actually exceeds that 10%.
I think that's fine, put it in the findings as a rationale.
Yeah.
As to why, especially with that, right?
And through the chair, this is, in addition, I mean, a large portion of the parking is underground, which, you know, you cannot landscape. And that would be the space in which you would put interior landscaping, interior to the parking.
Yeah, it's true.
Just have them have a green roof.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to grant a waiver from section 210.124.e as described in the meeting documents.
So moved. Oh, second.
All right, Ronnie with the motion, Mary with the
Stephanie, you
second.
can just take whichever you prefer. Whatever.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Paul and
Raise your
Dave
hand.
abstain.
Through the chair,
Dave?
there's one more waiver that came out. The reduction of the width of the drive aisle in the parking garage to 21 feet.
Ah, yes.
And that's section 210-124B3.
210.124 B as in Bravo 3. All right, so the last one would be to grant a waiver from section 210.124.B3 requiring a minimum of 24 feet aisles between parking spots, and by granting this waiver we would allow in spots that to be reduced to approximately 21 feet for the columns within the parking garage.
So moved.
Second.
Was.
Second. Yeah.
You have discussion?
Yes, just briefly, I just want to ensure that it's like stated that it's not throughout the parking, it's
Just
for the rationale provided by the applicant.
Do we need an amendment to the motion there? Friendly amendment to the motion?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, as shown on the plans.
As shown on
As shown on the
plans.
plans. Perfect.
Friendly amendment. Okay.
Okay.
So moved.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Dave and Paul abstain. It's fun saying that, Dave.
Got you going now.
All right, I know we're a little bit behind here, and I apologize, but I think it's worth powering through this, which basically requires a lot of reading from me. You guys okay with that? And to the other applicants, I apologize, but we've all been in this position, and I think it makes sense to continue. Standards and findings. So, the findings that we've previously identified is that the board finds the proposed major project site plan conforms to the site plan standards as described in section 210-136.1 of the zoning bylaws, with the exception of the waivers just discussed that have been granted, as the granting of these waivers is in the public interest and will not be inconsistent with the intent of the zoning bylaw. And we've got a couple of those being, previously discussed.
On and approved.
What's that?
Previously voted on and approved.
Thank you. Previously voted on and approved. We have a couple of other proposed findings here. I'm gonna go back to my notes here. A lot of flipping pages.
I'm ready for 3 of the 4 findings. It's on a roll, you know?
Okay, great.
Maybe you help me with the third one since we'll get there.
Which ones are you not doing?
Number 3, the 10% of the interior of the point site maintained.
Yep.
Just give me a quick note of why we're
Because the vast majority of the parking is underground. You can't landscape underground.
Oh, okay.
Seemed
That's
like the
parking
easiest
garage,
to-
right?
yeah.
Versus talking about the
Thank
front
you.
area.
So you want me to?
We're just gonna wait for you and then.
Okay.
Yeah. I appreciate this, Dave. This is wonderful.
No, and I can word tweak it when I give it to John.
If you can read the.
Yeah, I might have to write it for him.
That's what happened when you abstained.
I'm
Paul. So very careful.
All right, so
All right, go ahead, Dave. You want to read the other proposed findings?
yeah, basically number 1, the reason I guess we'll have to spell out the waiver that it's specifically talking about, but this is about the sidewalk. So we basically find that there is currently a sidewalk on the west side of South Street, and no need. I'll tweak it, but no need for a sidewalk on the east side.
Yeah, existing sidewalk on the west side, and there are no inconsistent sidewalks on the east side of the street.
Consistent sidewalks. Blah, blah, blah. Number 2, which has to do with the planting area around the entire perimeter. I said we find that the parking lot perimeter exists for the current building and in some places is bordered by an existing wall and therefore endorse this waiver, whatever. The fact that there's, it currently exists.
Just thinking of.
Add on,
So the board finds the John has a
The
proposal there.
parking lot perimeter will remain unchanged from current existing conditions.
Works.
Yep.
Yeah, short and sweet to the point.
Minor only suggestions, John. It's not my forte. And as Mary just noted, for the third one, we find that the parking garage is underground and therefore can't be landscaped.
We find that the requirement for 10% of the parking lot be. What's the right word?
Wait, what?
I mean, the majority of the parking is below grade and cannot be landscaped appropriately.
Yeah,
Really.
there we go.
Exactly.
Perfect. Findings as read aloud
I won't
by,
be- I won't-
as read aloud by our principal planner.
I basically won't have to send him anything. This is great.
In the future, just scribble.
And the last one?
The last one was something about that it's for a parking garage. What was the last waiver? I don't have it listed here.
Oh,
The drive aisle,
What's that?
the reduction of drive aisle.
Oh, because there are
Yeah.
columns
Yeah, what was it,
supporting.
like 25 feet or something?
25 feet is
25.
a requirement if they're providing 21.
20, okay, 21 instead of 24. Thank you. Are you good with that? I mean, I didn't have much on. We find that this waiver is for, or we find that 21 feet.
So the board finds that in a underground garage, that 21 feet
Is sufficient.
between columns is sufficient to allow for safe vehicular travel.
My concern is that that could be cited permanently as 21 feet for everything. Are we okay with that?
We mentioned it, parking garage.
In a parking garage,
And basically, the way it's read, it could be
Where-
interpreted by
yeah,
someone else as
okay.
we're okay with 21 feet across.
so the board finds that 21 feet between columns
Between columns, right.
is sufficient to allow for safe vehicular travel.
Between columns in a parking garage.
They're very specific, thank you.
Yeah.
You good with that, John? Between columns in a parking garage. 21 feet between columns in a parking garage is sufficient.
So I think the columns are spaced more than 21 feet, but
Yeah.
it happens where the aisle, where one column is located within the drive aisle, so. I don't want you to
It's
get-
not between.
It's an
columns.
unusual circumstance.
Yes.
It's between one column and the end of the other spaces on the other side of the aisle. There's not necessarily another column there.
Are there any other proposed findings?
Should we say something like that select columns?
I think we're okay.
Okay.
We've underground garage
What if
and
we say the board finds the drive aisles of 21 feet in width within the parking garage is sufficient in this specific circumstance?
perfect.
Sounds good.
That's why you get paid the big bucks.
That's why I don't.
All right. So I think are we good on findings? All right.
I think we all feel good about having it, right? Just like John
Yes.
said, something basic and.
Sorry, I should say that's the findings for the major site plan. The findings for the special permit for parking reduction, the proposed findings would be the board finds the proposed reduction amount of off-street parking spaces, parentheses, providing 226 off-street parking spaces of the required 305 off-street parking spaces will provide adequate parking for all parking needs of the proposed development consistent with section 210.124.d of the zoning bylaws.
Yes.
That parking count has not changed, correct?
It's still 226.
Is that currently right?
Two 26, right? And then the stormwater management permit findings, the proposal is that the board finds the proposed work will comply with the Hopkinton stormwater regulations, with,
I don't believe any waivers were requested.
correct, with no waivers. We did have a condition to add, well, the condition's already built in. All right, so we're good on findings. Moving on to conditions. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna read through these as quickly as I can. These do need to be read aloud. So I'm just gonna ask if you guys have any questions or comments, to, let me know. And then I think we've got a couple of conditions to add at the end.
The existing ones are 15 plus a few more.
So it's 15 for the site plan,
Oh,
and then
right,
we've
right,
got
right.
the conditions for the special permit and the
Right.
stormwater
Thank
management
you.
permit. The stormwater management permit is the long one.
Ooh. It's even got like A's and B's and C's.
It
All
all
right.
has to be read for the record.
It all has to be read aloud for the record. Right,
Did we
John?
read aloud in person? When we were in person?
Yeah, we did.
We did,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, we ready?
Make an
Number
amendment.
one, after finding that it was in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent and purpose of the site planning standards, the planning board waived strict compliance with the following provisions of section 210.136.1. The waivers of the provisions allowed the construction of the development as shown on the approved plans, per waivers previously reviewed and approved. The Director of Municipal Inspections inspects projects under construction for compliance with the approved decision of site plan review. This includes the driveway, roadway, and infrastructure construction shown on the plan. If applicable, if the Director of Municipal Inspections determines at any time before or during construction that a registered professional engineer or other such outside professional is required to assist with the inspections of the stormwater management system or any other component of the site plan, the applicant shall be responsible for the costs of these inspections. Number 3, all construction activities shall adhere to applicable local, state, and federal laws and regulations regarding noise, vibration, dust, sedimentation, and the use of, interference with, or blocking of town roads. The applicant shall be responsible for mitigating all construction-related impacts, including erosion, siltation, and dust control. The applicant shall maintain all portions of any public way used for construction access free of soil, mud, or debris deposited due to use by construction vehicles associated with the project, and shall regularly sweep such areas as directed by the Director of Municipal Inspections in consultation with the DPW Director. Number 5, the applicant shall regularly remove construction trash and debris from the site in accordance with good construction practice and the construction management plan. No tree stumps, demolition material, trash, or debris shall be burned or buried on the site. 6, all exterior lighting within the development project, whether shown in the approved site plan or required by the Massachusetts State Building Code, shall be shielded, directed downward and not upward or outward, and shall not spill onto the adjacent property. 7, all fixed mechanical equipment on the site shall be screened from view from the ground. Such screening shall be sufficient in the opinion of the Director of Municipal Inspections. Number 8, if construction is not commenced within 3 years of the date of filing of the site plan decision with the town clerk, approval shall be automatically rescinded unless such time is extended by the board. For the purposes of this condition, the term commenced shall mean the commencement of site work. Number 9, a completed signed construction management plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of any site work. The applicant shall also submit a revised full plan set which incorporates all the modifications made during the public hearing process and any required in this decision. Number 10, a completed signed long-term operation and maintenance plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the commencement of construction. This can be combined with the construction management plan if preferred by the applicant. Number 11, erosion and sedimentation control measures shall be implemented during the construction period in accordance with the approved site plan and the construction management plan. If they are found to be inadequate, the applicant shall immediately correct any deficiencies. Number 12, the planning board shall receive a sign-off confirming that the site contractor and any major subcontractors have received the construction management plan prior to the commencement of any site work. Number 13, construction may occur only between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturdays between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. pursuant to Chapter 141, Article 1, or Article I of the Town of Hopkinton General Bylaws. 14, the applicant shall submit final as-built plans to the planning board prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy. 15, the applicant developer shall provide the principal planner with a project point of contact and contact information prior to the issuance of building permits. This point of contact information shall be kept current through correspondence to the principal planner until the final certificate of occupancy is issued or construction is otherwise considered complete. We had, what else do we have for proposed conditions on the
3
site
other conditions.
Okay.
The applicant shall endeavor to install a crosswalk at some point along the site's frontage, subject to DPW approval. So this is the first time you guys are hearing these, so please correct me if any of these sound incorrect. That's number 16. Number 17, the applicant shall notify the principal planner at least 1 week, parentheses 7 days, prior to the infiltration basin construction to allow for a representative of the town to observe this work.
Question on that. Does that go in the stormwater management permit or the site plan review?
Could go in either, but it's up to you guys.
To me, it goes in the stormwater.
Yeah, well,
Stormwater?
Some of the other ones you read could also go in the stormwater, so.
They also might be in there, duplicates. Would you like to move that to stormwater?
Yes.
Okay. So, number 17, the applicant shall endeavor to provide an interior pedestrian walkway connecting the 2 entrances as long as the path can be safely traveled by pedestrians.
Is the applicant comfortable with that? Seems reasonable. Okay. Any other conditions on the site plan? All right, conditions for a special permit for parking reduction. Number 1, any change in use or change in gross floor area that would require additional off-street parking space, such that the reduction granted by the special permit shall be rendered insufficient, shall require an amendment to the special permit. Number 2, the applicant developer shall provide the electrical infrastructure, e.g. conduit and wiring that can provide sufficient power to the charging stations, etc., necessary to accommodate at least 6 electric vehicle charging stations in the parking lot so that EV charging stations may be installed in any time in the future.
And a note on that one, the applicant had previously said that all of the underground parking spaces were going to be wired for that, so it's up to the board if you want to continue to include that condition or take it out.
I'm comfortable including that condition because
Why not?
it's
Yeah.
good practice. If they want to exceed it, then that's wonderful.
Great.
But And I don't think we have any other conditions for that special permit.
Do you want me to do any of these?
You know, if you would like, that would be great, Mary. Thank you.
Stormwater management permit. 1, all erosion and sediment controls shall comply with the following performance criteria. Minimize total area of disturbance and protect natural features in soil. Sequence activities to minimize simultaneous areas of disturbance. Mass clearings and gradings of the entire site shall be avoided. Minimize peak rate of runoff in accordance with the Massachusetts stormwater standards. Minimize soil erosion and control sedimentation during construction, provided that prevention of erosion is preferred over sedimentation control. Divert uncontaminated water around disturbed areas. Maximize groundwater recharge. Install and maintain all erosion and sediment control measures in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications and good engineering practices. Prevent off-site transport of sediment. Protect and manage on and off-site material storage areas. Overburden and stockpiles of dirt, borrowed areas, or other areas used solely by the permitted project are considered a part of the project. Comply with applicable state, federal, state, and local laws and regulations, including waste disposal, sanitary sewer or septic system regulations, and air quality requirements, including dust control. Prevent significant alteration of habitats mapped by the Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as endangered, threatened, or of special concern, estimated habitats of rare wildlife and certified vernal pools, and priority habitats of rare species from the proposed activities. Institute interim and permanent stabilization measures, which shall be instituted on a disturbed area as soon as practicable, but no more than 14 days after construction activity has temporarily or permanently ceased on that portion of the site. Properly manage on-site construction and waste materials. Prevent off-site vehicle tracking of sediments. Dust shall be controlled at the site, and divert off-site runoff from highly erodible soils and steep slopes to stable areas. 2. The project shall comply with the following erosion and sediment control requirements. Prior to any land disturbance activities commencing on the site, the developer shall physically mark limits of no land disturbance on the site with tape, signs, or orange construction fence, so that workers can see the areas to be protected. The physical markers shall remain in place until a certificate of completion has been issued. B. Appropriate erosion and sediment control measures shall be installed prior to soil disturbance. Measures shall be taken to control erosion within the project area. Sediment in runoff water shall be trapped and retained within the project area. Wetland areas and surface waters shall be protected from sediment. C. Sediment shall be removed once the volume reaches 1/4 to 1/2 the height of a hay bale. Sediment shall be removed from the silt fence prior to reaching the load-bearing capacity of the silt fence, which may be lower than 1/4 to 1/2 the height. D. Sediment from sediment traps or sedimentation ponds shall be removed when design capacity has been reduced by 50%. E. Soil stockpiles must be stabilized or covered at the end of each workday. Stockpile side slopes shall not be greater than 2 to 1. All stockpiles shall be surrounded by sediment controls. F. Disturbed areas remaining idle for more than 14 days shall be stabilized with seeding, wood chips, bark mulch, tarpaulins, or any other approved methods. G. For active construction areas such as borrow or stockpile areas, roadway improvements, and areas within 50 feet of a building under construction, a perimeter sediment control system shall be installed and maintained to contain soil. H. A tracking pad or other approved stabilization method shall be constructed at all entrance-exit points of the site to reduce the amount of soil carried onto roadways and off the site. Wilson Street and Cedar Street in the vicinity of the project shall be swept as needed throughout the construction process. Is that?
Sorry, just one thing. I don't think that last part applies.
Shouldn't be there?
Scratch that.
Yeah,
think so.
Wilson Street and Cedar Street.
Yeah.
Carry over.
Carry over.
Copy paste.
That was a quick,
I know.
good pass, Gary. Good job.
I don't write these conditions every time.
I hope not. I. Permanent seeding shall be undertaken in the spring from March through May, and in late summer and early fall from August to October 15th, during the peak summer months and in the fall after October 15th, when seeding is found to be impractical. Appropriate temporary stabilization shall be applied. Permanent seeding may be undertaken during the summer if plans to provide for adequate mulching and watering. If plans provide for adequate mulching and watering. J. All slopes steeper than 3 to 1. As well as perimeter dikes, sediment basins, or traps and embankments must, upon completion, be immediately stabilized with sod, seed, or anchored straw mulch, or other approved stabilization measures. Areas outside of the perimeter sediment control system must not be disturbed. K. Temporary sediment trapping devices must not be removed until permanent stabilization is established in all contributory drainage areas. L. All temporary erosion and sediment control measures shall be removed after final site stabilization. Disturbed soil areas resulting from the removal of temporary measures shall be permanently stabilized within 30 days of removal.
Take a breath, because the last 5 are really short.
Oh, good.
Yeah, actually, while you're taking a break.
We made it to number 3.
Or continue as possible to correct something that's with 2C.
2C?
Yeah.
2C, okay. That is, sediment shall be removed once the volume reaches 1/4 to 1/2 the height of a hay bale.
Okay, so firstly, why do we have a hay bale? And secondly, one is volume, one is height. So volume is meters or feet square cubed, I should say, and you can't have volume and height. It's different mathematical things.
I know what they mean though, but you're right.
Yeah.
You change volume to amount. Amount of sediment.
How about the water line reaches,
But
or
it's
sediment?
the sediment amount.
The sediment amount.
Getting up to a certain height on the
That's
hay
the
bale.
physical
The sediment
Yeah, okay.
accumulation.
piece that they use to
I will
stop
go with
the
that.
sediment.
Okay?
Okay.
Sediment accumulation. Reaches.
Then you can use height.
Okay, good?
Thank you.
Okay.
Back to number 3.
Gave me a good rest, thanks.
You're welcome. 3,
a minimum of 7 days prior to the start of construction, a detailed construction sequence shall be submitted to the principal planner by the site contractor for review and approval. The approved construction sequence shall be followed throughout the course of the construction and shall be altered only with prior review by and written approval from the principal planner. 4, a signed copy of the stormwater pollution prevention plan shall be provided to the board prior to the building permit. Per 6.0K2, the stormwater pollution prevention plan must include the signed notice of intent and approval letter. 5, all required stormwater pollution prevention plan, stormwater construction site inspection reports shall be submitted to the principal planner within 14 days of each inspection. 6, an adequate stockpile of erosion control materials shall be on site at all times for emergency or routine replacement and shall include materials to repair or replace silt fences, hay bales, stone filters, berms, or any other devices planned for use during construction. 7, soil testing and excavation of the site's stormwater basins must be observed by the board's engineer prior to laying loam and seed. The applicant or developer shall notify the principal planner at least 48 hours, weekends and holidays excluded, prior to the soil testing and/or excavation to allow for adequate time to coordinate these observations. 8, all stormwater basins must be cleaned once the site is stabilized. All stormwater basins shall be cleaned prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
Thank you, Mary.
And through the chair.
We've got one more. John?
And this is going to be number 9. The applicant shall notify the principal planner at least 1 week, parentheses, 7 days prior to the infiltration basin construction to allow for a representative of the town to observe this work.
All right, any other conditions?
Just a quick question, John, if I may.
Please.
So, normally with developments, we have a performance guarantee. Do we have that with this? We don't, right?
There's none proposed.
Yeah. Probably doesn't make sense, right?
Because it's all on private property, there's no new road, there's no
Yeah, I was just throwing it out there, just
modifications to
thinking out
existing
loud.
roads. Yeah, good
Thanks.
question. All right. So we've got through that. There's just a couple things left here. I do just want to open it up if there's any public comment. Seeing none. I think that means that we are ready to go ahead and take a vote.
Mr. Chair, just a question about voting. Do we vote for all 3 in one vote, or do we do 3 different?
You know, I was going to do it separately, in part because we don't need to do a roll call vote. So I think we can do that pretty quickly, and that's just a little bit cleaner.
You can do them separately, you can do them together.
Separate works for me.
Yeah.
Keep saying nothing. Abstain.
All right.
Way to go,
So, So on the major site plan, I will entertain a motion that the board approve the major project site plan with the conditions and findings previously read aloud by the chair, the vice chair, and the principal planner.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? All right, 2 abstentions, so that motion carries. On the special permit for parking reduction, I'll entertain a motion that the board approve the special permit with the following, with the conditions as previously allowed. John, I just realized, oh no, we don't need to open the hearings because this was continued. All right, phew, good, okay.
You have to read them all again.
We have to repeat everything.
Null and void.
No, but we do need to just remember that we need to open the last public hearing. So, sorry, I had a moment of panic there. So I will entertain a motion that the board approve the special permit for parking reduction with the conditions previously read aloud.
So moved.
And if there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? 2 abstentions, that motion carries. And on the stormwater management permit, I will entertain a motion that the board approve the stormwater management permit with the conditions and findings previously read aloud by the chair and the vice chair and the principal planner.
So moved. Second.
Jinx.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion carries. So now I will entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Assuming no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Voting was really fast.
All right, motion
know, it's
carries. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
And look forward to seeing the progress on this. And I think it's a good project, so thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, just a quick time check. It is 9:17. We do need to be out of here at 10 o'clock sharp. So I'm hopeful that these last 2 can go pretty quickly. For the next one, the Box Mill Road amended permit, Mr. Prefer has graciously volunteered to walk us through this one. So I'll hand the responsibilities over to you, Mr. Prefer.
Thank you very much. So this is a continuation, although this is the first time we are seeing this. Brief background, the applicant is proposing a small change to the stormwater management system to allow increased capture of stormwater flow on the Box Mill Road. The plan shows the installation of an additional catch basin to capture the stormwater runoff in order to direct this runoff to the existing detention basin and reduce the amount of runoff to the east from the end of the roadway. John, if you wouldn't mind giving a little bit of background for the
Usually the applicant gives some
oh,
background.
I apologize. Thanks very much, John. This is Mr. Barbiera?
Yes.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Richard Barbier, yes, developer, Box Mill Road. Quick history.
Yes, please.
When we came before the board in 2015, we had no berm. The consultant recommended a berm. We put a berm on both sides of the road. The right side of the road, if the berm wasn't there, the water would have rode right into the retention area that's there. I'm being sued by Mr. Petrossi, who's further down the road. This is part of the settlement. If I put these 2 catch basins in, it brings all the water that was going down the road back into my property. Now, I did get Beta's report like 10 days ago, then I got another one today, but they want to show the installation of water quality unit on Leonard Street. I tried putting that in 2 years ago. We got the permit from Department of Public Works. I got all the guys up there, the street plates, got the road all set to put it in. And John Westland came out and stopped us. He said because he's being sued, we couldn't put it in. He called me about 3 weeks ago, said I can now put it in. I want to put that in the same time I install these catch basins. His other comments, We provided a cut sheet with everything. The long-term operation maintenance plan, you actually have. We submitted that back in 2015. That's why I want to see the file today, but I can get a copy of it from my engineer if you can't find it in the
So
file.
I think through the chair, Dave Markon provided that again today.
Oh, did he? Okay.
And I added it. I'll have to find. I think I added it to the other file. I'll find it and bring it up.
Just while that's being found, just to catch everyone else up. So for people who are unfamiliar with where Box Mill Road is, there's a perpendicular junction between Leonard Street and Box Mill, and this was built in what year did you say this area?
2016, 17.
2000. So it's fairly new. There's only was it half a dozen rough?
3 houses.
Three houses, even less.
There
than
should
that.
be 2 more in the future.
Okay, and the water goes in the southerly direction, and there's a pond. The catch basin is to the west, if I recall.
No, right now the water coming down the street goes into 2 catch basins, and then it goes into a town pipe across the road into Petrosi's property.
Okay.
Not most, but a lot of the water goes, naturally runs across the cul-de-sac and back into my property.
And so the proposal is because the water is being misdirected from someone, there's the proposal of putting 2 catch basins
Correct.
to remediate this problem here. Phil, you had an opportunity for Beta to look at this, and you provided 2 reports here, one on the 12th and the other on the 17th. Would you mind walking us through some of these?
Yeah, no, I think generally the improvements will provide a capture as was intended. There is driveways and lawns and whatever that sheet flow into the street, and because there's no stormwater until the end of it, it all goes down to the end. So and I think the intent as I reviewed the previous stormwater calculations that were previously submitted. The intent was always to capture that and put it in the basin. So this actually fulfills that. The basins are in decent shape, and it should function very well to reduce that. So,
sorry, continue.
Yeah. So there was just a couple minor things that because we were familiar with Leonard Street and the issues there. We know that the water quality unit's supposed to go in, it wasn't put in, but now can't be put in, so I think it should still be shown on the plan, but and then the O&M plan, we hadn't seen the updated. The reason we want an updated plan is typically it comes with a plan to show the structures that need to be maintained, so the 2 catch basins would need to be added to that. I'm assuming that the rest of it was fine. It's just a minor thing like that.
So just to clarify from what you said earlier, you indicated that you had wanted to put the catch basin in Leonard Street, and then you weren't allowed, and now you wish to do it again.
No, not the catch basin, the storm scepter.
Oh, my apologies. The
storm scepter. We tried putting. It's there. It's been there for 2 years. It was $9,500. We tried putting in. Like I said, they issued us the permit. We had the guys here cut the street, the machines, everything, put it in. John come out and threw us out. I mean, I want to put it in. I want to get the road accepted.
And so, Beta, I think that's under your SW1. You indicated that this issue remains outstanding.
Right.
And so, if this is, because you said you want to do it, if this is dealt with, that would resolve SW1, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But I think you could resolve that by just indicating on this plan as well that it's going to be, if the intent is for
The intent is there. Okay.
It is on the original subdivision.
It was in the original subdivision,
Yeah.
but it was.
So the issue with you've got a modified plan that does not show it now, so you just got to be careful what we approve.
Right. I mean, I'm going to put it in. It's there.
So, John, some clarity here. So, based upon the fact that it was originally proposed and was not done, how do we proceed here?
So they're amending the plan.
Or are they actually, are they amending a plan, or are they going back to the original plan? Because
They're amending the plan, because it's an amendment to the approved subdivision.
Okay.
To include these catch basins.
Mhm.
So theoretically, if I were to review an amended plan and something was not on that plan anymore, I would assume it was removed. So I think Phil's point is saying, everything that was on the previous plan is still gonna be installed, should be on this plan in addition to the new stuff. And so since storm scepter's not shown on this plan, it would be assumed that it would be removed, or somebody could say, since I've amended the plan now and it's not on there, I no longer have to put it on.
Okay, I understand. So the important thing is to ensure that the storm scepter on Leonard Street is on the proposed amendment.
Everything that was approved in the previous subdivision,
If I
that's
could-
going to be installed, and all the new stuff should be on the same plan, because this is an amended plan that should include everything.
We'll put it on the plan, but when I read this, it said update to plan to show the installation. I thought he meant that the installation was there, but it's not there. We'll put it on the plan.
We just need to have an updated
Yep,
plan that
that's
shows
fine.
everything.
I'll
so
put it
that
on.
When we look back on it, we know what's there.
But I think okay. I just think it was a misunderstanding on us.
That's fine.
Oh, no, that's fair, that's fair. Phil, any other of the other points, because you had SW1 all the way SW6, any other issues?
So, I mean, they're minor, but because of the shallow height of the structures, they're gonna have to be flat top, the details.
No, and
Like
those
the
are all
con-
acceptable.
Any contractor would know that, but just for observation, future, as-built or whatever, we would appreciate just showing it correctly.
Yep.
And then, I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
There's very few, actually, yes. I'll open it up to committee.
Mr. Chair, so it sounds like the big thing is just to update drawings to be complete with what's to be built, but aside from that,
Yeah, sounds like they have a plan, they're gonna go for it.
So I have one question. So I like the changes, I think it's gonna make it better.
What's that?
I like the changes, I think it's gonna make it better all the way
Yeah.
around. What happened in 2015? Was this not something on your radar screen that this?
I don't really wanna go backwards, but I will if you want. We submitted the plan showing no berm, that water was gonna run off. Your consultant, I have it right here, suggests that a berm be provided on both edges of the road. The berm was provided, okay, capturing more water. The person down the road sued me. Part of the settlement, I gotta put these in.
Okay. Just trying to
That's what happened.
I understand.
Which was part of the original plan in the first.
What's that?
Which was part of the original plan in the first place.
Not the berm.
Okay. Part of the settlement.
Any other comments at this point?
So, through you, Mr. Acting Chair, this needs a vote, right?
I believe we need a recommendation that we have an updated drawing, and we can have a conditional acceptance, knowing that the updated drawing will come. Is that a fair assessment, John? That we could have a conditional acceptance should a new drawing be provided at it.
Yes, I'm currently trying to find the condition, I think it was in one of the previous approvals tonight, yeah. The applicant shall also submit a revised full plan set which incorporates all of the modifications made during the public hearing process and any required in this decision. I think we can include that as a separate condition.
Yes. So, to the applicant, all of the conditions that are listed here, there's nothing you're opposed to.
No.
And Phil, you're okay with everything that is being suggested?
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to be clear, there's seven existing conditions, and we're going to add number 8, I think, John?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. To ensure that I'm doing this in the correct order, John, I believe we first, do we vote on the actual proposal, or do we vote on, do we read off all the proposed conditions before we do a vote? obviously we need a motion, clearly, I just wanna make sure I get the order correct.
Yeah, so we usually go through the outline. Do not need to go through the outline. If you guys are all comfortable, we just need to read the conditions, read the findings, and then you can vote on all of it.
Okay.
I would recommend you have John do the staff report, and I know there's not a ton in here, but I think that's always a worthwhile check. And then I think that we can get to my recommendation would be to go to I think there are no waivers, we can cover off the decision criteria, findings, conditions, and then vote.
Fair enough. Okay, John, is there any staff reports? that
Yeah,
you want to-
so, not too much in this one. We didn't receive any comments from other departments. It's a relatively minor change. As Mr. Barbieri said, it's to address litigation, so hopefully this resolves this issue. And as Phil said, it was all intended to go there anyway, so it's really just changing the design to do what was originally intended. So no real comments from me.
Any other comments from anyone else from the committee?
Not for me, but maybe the public.
That's a very good point, thank you. We usually actually open up to the public. Is it 3 minutes per, typically? So is there anyone from the public that would like to speak regarding this item? We're going to be well underneath the half hour.
But we have another hearing.
I know, but for this particular line item, we had saved 30 minutes for this. Okay,
Be
so.
careful. We could use up those 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't give Dave a reason.
Don't give me a challenge.
Okay, so the decision criteria is the board must determine if the proposed amendment definitively subdivision plan conforms to subdivision regulations, and if waivers are requested, which are not, whether it is appropriate to grant them. I believe at this point I need to call a vote, and then, or do I read that? Again, I apologize there, John. Do I read the proposed conditions first and then we call for the vote?
So I guess the first thing would be if any board members have any ideas that it's not consistent with the subdivision regulations. There can just be consensus agreement on that, and then move on to reading the conditions.
Okay.
Fine.
Are there any additional conditions or any additional comments from the committee regarding the subdivision, regarding this
Compliance with the subdivision regulations.
compliance with subdivision plans?
Through the acting chair.
Thank you.
I believe it complies with all of the subdivision regs. Looks fine.
Concur? Anybody else? None? Okay, sorry about that. So I will read the proposed conditions, and then we can have a motion, or what's the order here?
So we need to go through the findings, the proposed findings, and the conditions, and then we can go ahead and vote.
Call the vote.
Yes.
Okay, so the findings. Okay, so I move that the board finds that the proposed definitive subdivision plan conforms to the subdivision regulations with the exception of the following waivers, which there are none, which are hereby granted as the granting of these waivers is in the public interest and will not be inconsistent with the intent of the subdivision control law. Okay, so the proposed conditions, there are 7 and there's one more, right? Correct, John?
Correct.
Okay, so I'll read the 7 initially ones. Proposed conditions. After finding that it is in the public interest and not inconsistent with the intent of the purpose of the subdivision control law, the planning board waives strict compliance with
Through the acting chair, you can actually probably strike this condition, because there's no waivers.
There are no waivers. Okay, so there will only be 7 still. The first one begins as a town clerk certified version of this decision shall be recorded at the Middlesex County Register of Deeds prior to the issuance of the building permit for the work that is subject to this decision. All conditions contained in this decision for the development project dated February 3rd, 2016 shall remain in full force and effect unless modified by this decision. A copy of the NOI from the EPA and signed SWPPP shall be provided to the Planning Board and Conservation Commission prior to construction. A signed copy of the O&M plan shall be submitted to the planning board prior to the construction. The applicant developer shall provide within the O&M plan a BMP map updated to include new infiltration basin. The applicant developer shall provide a signed illicit discharge statement prior to the commencement of construction. And John?
The applicant shall also submit a revised, or the applicant shall submit a revised full plan set which incorporates all of the modifications made during this public hearing process and any required in this decision.
Are there any comments regarding the listed conditions? Okay, hearing none, I will call for a vote, or not call for a motion that the board approve the definitive subdivision plans with all the conditions that were already that I had read out loud.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Any further discussions? Hearing none, call the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
You need to close the public hearing. Congratulations.
And I close the public hearing regarding the mill.
We have to move and vote on it.
Sorry? We have to vote to close. Okay, first we have to
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
For Box Mill.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of closing the discussion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? So moved. Phil, thank you very much.
All right. Nice job,
Paul,
Brian.
was that your
Well done.
first, Paul? Your first real vote? Thank you, Phil. On planning board?
think so.
Congratulations.
Very exciting.
All right, we've got one more. We've got 24 minutes. We're going to try to go quickly here. To begin, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing for 84 to 92 West Main Street.
So moved.
Second.
Assuming no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain. All right. Applicant, welcome. And like I said, I'm hopeful this is going to be reasonably simple, but why don't you just give us the 30-second rundown on why you are before us to amend your site plan.
Okay, Peter Barbieri on behalf of Global, Mike Cheverton from Global, and then Jack Sisson from Bowler Engineering. Back in 2008, we received approvals from your board, the Conservation, the Zoning Board of Appeals, to reconstruct the station what's out there. There were delays of COVID and litigation, but now we're substantially complete, hoping to be opening in the next month or so. As part of that whole review and changes, there were some operational changes in the nature of the food service operations, spacing, and all those other items. So things which have been changed along those lines internally, all been approved by the Board of Health. But the net result is there's really no inside space available for storage for non-food and non-food equipment supplies. So we are proposing to install a shed, 10 by 12 shed, place it behind the building so it's not visible, and screen it in by 12 arborvitae trees so that we could do the kind of station supplies and operational stuff that we want to keep separate from the things inside. So that's the request in the nature of the storage shed. The other aspect that changed was signage. Originally there had been a standing sign approved at 6 feet. Just there were thoughts on changing that and adding a second one and making them 10 feet high. We met with the design group last week. Their recommendation, and we can live with, is basically to go back to the 6 foot high standing sign. And I don't know if we submitted one, but we have no problem with that as a condition of the sign being no more than 6 feet. We changed some of the landscaping in front of the sign and under it so it's lower, so it's not going to block the sign, but we're agreeable to 6 feet in height.
So just to clarify, two things at hand here, and this is the new all-town station, if people are not familiar with it. But number one is to add a shed for storage of non-food related items. And just out of curiosity, what kinds of things do you need to store in the shed?
the speed dry, all the kind of business operational stuff, and landscaping supplies, all that type of stuff, we want to separate from what's inside.
Speed dry?
Anything else?
What's speed dry?
So except oil.
If there's a
okay.
spill.
Got it.
You don't watch
Okay.
NASCAR?
Got it. Perfect.
NASCAR?
And locating right behind the building is the good location, so if God forbid anything happened, it's right there, they can grab it and take care of it.
Got it. Okay. And we'll, do you have a, and then the second one is with regards to the signage, and you're proposing a second sign, is that correct? Okay.
Since the property, actually on 3 streets, but your bylaw allows for properties on 2 streets that have 2 signs, 2 standing signs. So we have one now on Lumber Street, so people at the intersection can see it. And then the one that was previously approved, as you come into the site from downtown, the original location was at the right at the driveway, and we moved that in between the 2 driveways, so it's basically in front of the store.
And this is the sign that shows the gas prices, is that what's on it?
Yeah.
Correct. Okay. All right. John?
Yes.
You have a staff report? Oh, you're almost out of juice?
No, I was trying to look at the previous site plan decision from 2018, but for some reason it's loading very slowly on my computer, so. I think Mr. Barbieri covered most of what my comments would be. The Design Review Board recommends approval of the site plan, but they recommend approval of the 2 signs as proposed with the maximum height of 6 feet, not 10 feet. And as Mr. Barbieri said, they were amenable to that change. And the proposed modification of the site is minimal and is not anticipated to significantly impact the design of the site as previously approved. One concern that was brought to me today from one of the Design Review Board members outside of the meeting process was the safety of the back entrance on Elm Street, but I'm looking at the plan that was previously approved, and that was already an addressed issue, and they have allowed for that access to be there, so I think that is moot at this point. So,
And can you just show us on the drawing, and for the people at home, where said shed is going?
Not the she said shed.
Thank you.
So, shed, yeah, you guys can probably show it. Yeah, so this is the new shed.
Right.
And I believe they received ZBA approval to get it located.
We have a
closer.
ZBA next week.
Okay, so it doesn't conform to zoning, but that's ZBA's jurisdiction, so they are going to see if they can locate that closer to the boundary than allowed. And then the signs are...
That plan doesn't detail it, but if you recall, everything north of that property line had been all the gravel stuff, which we're putting in curbing, and we're putting in, if you've been by the site, we've already put in grass and everything, so it's all landscaping from the building right to the edge of curb, which it wasn't previously.
So the one sign that was approved is this one. However, it was in either here or here, I forget which location.
So it was right about here.
Yeah, so it was in this location.
Yeah.
And then moving over here, and then the second sign is...
Second sign's back at...
Yeah, right in the center island
Oh.
between the 2 driveways.
Yeah, so
Yeah, between the 2 islands.
am I not seeing
The 2 drives.
Yeah, proposed monument
Right
sign
there,
right here.
yep.
So there'd be that one there. Sorry, Jim.
This one here. Yep.
And then one at the corner.
And then one at the corner, kind of offset from, it's at the intersection, but it's not right along the main street line. It's
Both
kind of-
6 feet tall?
So Design Review Board recommended that both are 6 feet. According to this plan, they are 10 feet. But the applicant has stated they are amenable to revising the plan to
Yeah.
show it as 6 feet.
And I see it number 3 in the proposed condition as well.
Okay. Thanks, John. Gets us through that. I am assuming we're okay without a sidewalk here. We've probably all driven by that site sufficiently. As far as the decision criteria goes, the board must determine if the proposed applicant conforms to the site plan standards as contained in section 210.136.1 of the zoning bylaws. Any concerns or comments? It seems like 2 signs is allowable. because they have frontage on 2 streets. I personally like the lower sign. I think it's also in character with gas station across the street. So I think that makes sense. As far as the shed goes, it's not in compliance right now as it's designed because it doesn't conform to the setbacks, correct?
I would think we'd have a condition that we can't install it unless and until we get zoning board of appeals approved.
Through the chair, I mean, you can include that condition, but if it's not conforming in zoning, it doesn't matter, they can't do it. So ZBA is really kind of, if ZBA says it's okay, then it's okay. It's just, if the board determines that the shed is some other site plan issue, that's where your jurisdiction would come in.
I will say, I'm surprised with the building as big as it is that there isn't a storage closet or something behind there. I mean, you guys have built enough gas stations.
Yeah,
I
well,
think this
you
is
know,
pretty common need, but.
Like Peter said, we're opening up in a month, so I'll encourage you to come by and you'll see what we're filling the space with. But yeah, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot with that. But this is where we're at now and trying to get the storage that we can outside of the building.
And I realize Design Review Board has already reviewed this, but you know, in terms of and I know there's can you easily pull up the elevation of? I just want to talk through like the appearance of the shed and. What if you could just describe that quickly, materials and whatnot?
Yeah, we're going with a cedar siding on the side. We're going to paint it to match the color of the building. This is a generic photo that is being shown right now. It's a 10 by 12 shed that has an 8-foot height. We're going to put we're putting 2 windows on it, just as shown. So we're going to try to dress it up as best we can, and then we are going to surround the 3 sides that are facing Elm Street with arborvitaes. So really the only visual that you're going to see is if you're directly behind the building.
It'll be white to match the building.
Fran?
Is there any lighting associated with the shed that will be on the front of the shed or at any point?
No, we might have one light inside just illuminated at night, but there's lights on the back of the building that would illuminate the sidewalk in front of it.
Did you have, I'm sorry,
No,
through
go
the chair,
ahead.
did you have to remove any landscaping back there to put the shed there?
Not there, no. Okay. No, it was all originally grass area.
Yeah, Dave. So I just wanted to comment that when we worked with this applicant in the past, they were very cooperative. They I remember that the plan originally called for retention ponds, and then they converted that to underground drainage. So, and I also want to comment on the landscaping with the maple trees around there and the grass. I think you guys did a great job. So, just wanted to call that out.
Through the chair, just one question. Is there any external like dumpsters or trash outside of the building? Like,
Yes, there is.
where's that in relation to the shed? Plan left.
Yeah, it's on the right here.
Okay.
But then you can kind of see we're limited in this area with the detention pond that's over there.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Dave.
Real quick one. Arborvitaes, do you know what type they are? Are they deer resistant? If you tell me the word giant arborvitaes, then I'm all set. But they're probably not giants. I don't know. I mean, it's more of just a suggestion that you don't really have to respond to it.
No, I got it right here, so I'll look at the answer.
Yes, Jane. While he's looking that up.
Just one quick one. Maybe I'll talk a little bit. What is your security for the shed itself?
That's going to be
After hours?
padlocked, some sort of combination for the most part, and generally the manager would have the key. So it's not something that's going to get access a whole lot. Just in a time of need, they'll try to bring the items into the store as needed.
Thank you.
We do have security cameras around the building as well.
So it's a Techni arborvitae.
Do you know if it's deer resistant? I just
I don't.
If you could check on that when you get back, just because I don't know if you've seen what the deers do to the arborvitaes, but it's up about 6 feet completely bare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a fair recommendation that's consistent with us, but deer-resistant arborvitaes are highly recommended.
Through the chair, just one quick question is like, so you mentioned some of the storage, like is there a maximum amount of flammables that you're allowed to store in a space that size?
We're not going to be storing any flammable items in the shed.
And that's one's okay.
Yeah. Really, it's just going to be we have big tubs of speedy dry that take up a lot of area, and we try to keep them close to the building. So if there is an accident, we can access them quickly and.
That's like kitty litter, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. That's a good way to describe it. And then other just general dry goods.
Okay.
Fran?
Mr. Chair, are you talking about the signs yet, or are we still just talking about the shed, or is it all?
We'll let's finish up on the shed, and then we'll talk through the signs. Any other comments on the shed? I think actually the gas station across the street also has a small shed, if I remember correctly, or a separate storage area someplace. So I'm just thinking through this. I'm not sure this is entirely unusual for gas stations to have something like this.
Through the chair, this random website that I've pulled up says
That's
that
a good way to start, John.
Techni arborvitae are a 4 out of 10 in deer resistance.
4
They're
out of
similar to thuja.
Oh, of course.
Well, yeah,
I've heard of that. Actually, I've heard of
Which are
that
the
one.
green giant
I don't know if that's a green giant, but
Yeah.
Thank
these
you
are
for
really
checking, but
cool.
that doesn't sound very good, 4 out of 10, right? But I'm sure these gentlemen will come up with a great solution.
All right. Any other comments about the shed? Let's switch gears and talk about the signage change. Fran, do you have a comment?
Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. Why 2?
Really comes down to better visibility. The first sign that we had, if you're coming from, we'll just say the center of Hopkinton to 495, there's a likelihood that you'll pass by the site without even seeing the sign going through the intersection. And putting the second sign at the corner gives that person a better visibility. And then on the talking about the second sign, getting closer to 495, the whole really approach is we want to make sure that we catch the customers line of sight before they reach the station. We don't want them to be at the station, then see the sign and make their decision. So it just really comes down to better visibility.
I'm going to push back on that. I think you can go with one sign adequately. I think the one right between the 2 driveways provides visibility both for the 495 people as well as the people coming from town. Once you're from town, you know that gas station's here. Your eyeballs are going right to what that price point is going to be, because you can kind of compare a person across the street. I live very close to that location. It is lit up like a Christmas tree, and that's going to be a big issue. I can tell you, you guys got the 24/7, 24-hour permit, right?
Right.
Exactly, right? And so having that much illumination and having this kind of dual signage, which I think you get away with one, I would just like to limit the amount of visual stimuli, Mr. Chair. And I think having a single sign adequately meets your purpose by having the second one on there.
As you know, the big thing now too with gasoline stations is price. So, the 2 signs gives good price visibility, which is on that, which is a station's business. So 2 signs with signage pricing is very crucial to that operation.
So appreciate the perspective, but I also just want to clarify that while this is a change, because they have frontage on multiple streets, per our bylaws, they are allowed to have 2 signs. Interpreting that correct, John?
And it meets all the height and dimensional. Both signs are the exact same and meet all your height and dimensional requirements.
Did John answer the question?
yeah. Let me pull up the section while we're talking so I can confirm.
So can I make a comment?
Sure, Dave.
So I appreciate where you're coming from, because I agree that that whole section down there is, on the other side of the street, we squeezed in some sites there, so it's all up in the air. But I do like the fact that the town has the restriction on the height of the sign. You've been to many other towns and you see the signs are like 30 feet in the air. So the fact that Hopkinton has those low signs with under 6 feet makes me feel a little bit better, but just a comment.
And through the chair, I personally agree with you completely, but if, you know, the signs are allowed, they're allowed. But I also know that the design has already gone through a change from when it was first approved by this board. I believe, Fran, you're the only person on this board who was part of that initial approval. The design went through a complete change of the facade, and the signage on the building went through a complete change that you know, was somewhat controversial. And the signs are larger and higher and things like that. It, you know, passed, and it was through the ZBA, not through us. But I do personally believe that it went against a lot of the things that were in the original approval. I mean, again, I was not part of that discussion. I was not part of that approval. It was before my time on the board. But reading the decision at the time, I think that, you know, there was a lot changed after the fact, not through the board. And, you know, it's not like they didn't follow all of the, you know, requirements, and it went through the ZBA the way it was supposed to, but it's still, you know, there's been a lot of changes, and I feel like it's to the detriment of the residential neighborhood behind that area, those changes, so.
Thanks, Mary. Ronnie?
I'm like, when I was young, I worked at many gas stations. I've never seen a gas station with 2 signs listing the price. Is there any practice where is this becoming more and more common? Because in my entire travels, I've never seen that. So that's why it's not only the need. I understand business-wise, you need to showcase a price differential. That is key. But 2 signs, again, without even considering the light pollution, I just think it almost saturates it. So I'm just curious, are there any instances where you ever seen this?
I do think that this is a site-specific matter where this site is just so long. I don't think I've seen a site this long where we have a 2-canopy system, I'll call it, on either side of the building. So I think the 2 signs just talk to how long the site is.
I can think of situations where I've seen multiple signage.
Okay.
Yeah, in some cases it's a low and a high. If it's on a corner, I mean, if it's on a corner, I mean, and they got traffic coming from both directions, they're gonna have a sign for both roads.
I've always seen it like near the corner and stuff like that. You know, that way you get people both ways. Again, there's the cost associated with building signs and stuff like that. I just think, you know, having multiple signs, it clutters up an already cluttered intersection.
Mr. Chair, noticing in the time.
Yep.
We went through a lot on the lighting, particularly the lighting on the building. And through the design board or committee last time around, we actually reduced the number of light fixtures over the front of the building at their request to keep down the lights in the area.
All right, so John's pulled up the bylaws here.
Lots that have frontage on more than one public way may have 2 standing signs on the lot, not to exceed 32 square feet in area, and each along a different public way.
So we meet all those requirements.
So a different public way. One of those is on the corner, and one of them is on the street.
Yeah, I mean, we actually have frontage on 3 streets.
Right.
Yeah, I realize that, but I just want to go back to the, sorry, John, can you go back to the schematic there?
So you don't really have it along the other street, you have it on the corner.
Worst case scenario, you split the radius, so we're on the Elm Street side of the radius. Other towns just extend the street line across.
Yeah, so according to your bylaws, based the way I was reading and determining the frontages, it's shown here. This is the transition point at this radius, on this radius, to where it transitioned from Main Street to Lumber Street frontage.
Which way does the sign face? It's visible from, can you point to me on the drawing as to where the?
Yeah, it faces directly this way into the intersection.
So facing roughly the same direction as the other side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah.
So one's facing this and one's facing here, so they're both facing the same general direction.
Yeah.
You need to cut it be like, 60 degrees.
Yeah, the other one's perpendicular to the road, but this one is
Yeah.
catching the same traffic coming up West Main.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think we have anything to stand on this. I think this discussion is moot. Because they're allowed 2 signs, right? I mean, what grounds can we deny them? I mean, we were just talking through and trying to convince them.
John, could you show the bylaw one more time?
Just close.
Because the way I read it, it was like, because it would have to be almost like 90 degrees to each other. One would have to be facing this way. That's how I inferred.
Well, it said they
that-
needed to be on different streets. It didn't say
public
they needed to be
ways.
faced different
It's public
directions.
ways.
No, but I thought the ending of the sentence was interpreted that way. But again, if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, I'm wrong. I have no qualms about that. Many times I'm wrong. That's the wife.
Even when you're right, you're wrong.
Through the chair, I believe Dave is right, and we don't have anything to discuss, I think the
Each
premise
along a
of-
different way, not
excuse me,
necessarily
excuse
facing
me,
perpendicular.
excuse
Mr.
me, I
Barbieri,
was speaking.
sorry, we're not gonna have back and forth. We have someone on the board
Oh.
speaking. You can't just interject yourself and talk over her.
And so, as I was saying, I don't think we have a discussion point on this in terms of the number of signs, but I do think your premise is wrong. The people coming from the center of town know there's a gas station there, they're gonna be looking for the prices, and the need for a second sign isn't there, but we really can't argue the point, from a decision standpoint.
To the
Brad?
chair, question. Mary agree with you to a certain extent, but what about the lighting associated with the signs?
The lighting the sign?
The lighting of the
It's-
signs,
it's,
right? There's
you
a
wanna-
ton of lighting with there right now, so I'm just curious as to additional lighting that's associated with the signs.
So the light levels based on the sign, it's really only to illuminate the sign itself and it's pointing downward. It's really, that's all it's made to do. There's gonna be, the canopy is gonna be way brighter, underneath the canopy, so this lighting is probably not gonna do much at all in that way of, oversaturating the site with light.
And these lights are gonna be on 24/7, correct? Essentially.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, we're almost up on time here, and I think we're beating this up pretty well. Are there any new points of consideration that folks want to get out on the table? Okay. Just check and see where we are here. Okay. So we don't have any waivers. We do have just a couple of conditions. The first one we can scratch because there are no waivers. The second one, all conditions set forth in the original site plan approval dated July 30th, 2018 shall remain in full force unless modified by this decision. And then 3, the maximum height of the freestanding signs shall be limited to 6 feet. Any other proposed conditions? Fran? Feel your pain. All right. Any final public comment? Don't think so. All right. So I think that did I miss anything here? Oh, in terms of findings, the proposed finding would be the board finds the proposed minor project site plan amendment conforms to the site plan standards as described in section 210-136.1 of the zoning bylaws. I think we're ready for a vote.
I make one comment before the vote, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I rarely do this. I think this is absolutely terrible. Living in that area, I walk by it almost every single night. It's the lighting, this additional sign, I don't think it's, I get it from a business perspective, but it's not really aesthetically appealing to people that live around there. I'm gonna vote to approve this because there's nothing in our bylaws that would kind of say that I should go against it. But I would tell you, just bad, I don't think it's a good thing to do from a perspective.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to find that the board to I'll entertain a motion that the board finds the proposed minor project site plan amendment conforms to the site plan standards as described in section 210-136.1, the zoning bylaws.
So moved.
Assuming no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so we're good on the findings.
I'm sorry, through the chair. Who seconded that?
Ron, very quietly.
Well, because I agree with Fran, it's just,
I know.
I knew that.
All right, and then we'll move to the approval. I'll entertain a motion that the board approves the minor project site plan amendment with the conditions as previously read aloud by the chair.
So moved.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving this minor project site plan amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that is approved. And so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing for this project.
So moved.
Assuming no discussion, all those in favor of closing the hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? And I will entertain a
Thank you.
motion to.
Welcome, good luck.
I was mid-sentence.
Yeah.
Mr. Barbier, I'm going to recommend
Yeah,
that when you're.
This is the second hearing in a row, my cousin has been here before me.
You're interrupting me again. I'm going to recommend that next time you're here, you be very careful about interrupting the members of the board as they're speaking. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Point of
So-
order. Point of order. You haven't done the minutes.
Ah,
So close.
so close. All right. We have some minutes from June 21st, 2022. Thank you, Stephanie. Are there any proposed changes to the minutes from the June 21st meeting?
No, they look good. Good night.
Thank you.
If there are none, then I will entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from June 21st, 2022.
So moved.
Fran with the second. Assuming no further discussion, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And we don't put on that one there.
All right. Our next meeting, August 8th, we will again be remote.
What?
Oh, really?
Yes.
What happened?
Because they passed it.
Number one, they
Oh,
passed
no,
it,
they
and number two, your
Oh,
chair is
wow.
going to be out of state, so I'm going to be chairing it remotely.